Hello everyone and welcome into our latest live broadcast as we're into phase 2. I was going to say part 2, but it's really phase 2 of our computer review and setup of a brand new Minisforum PC. And the reason I call these phases is because anytime that you buy a new computer, there are certain phases I recommend you go through before you just start getting too comfortable with it. And one will be getting everything out of the box, making sure nothing is damaged, getting all your Windows updates, just familiarizing yourself with the layout of the machine, as well as going through the process, which can take hours and hours and hours, of making sure all the Windows updates are installed. And this is also another way to test the machine to make sure everything's okay. Because if you're getting blue screens or other weird funky errors, you don't want to start putting any more time into customizing it. Not if you've got to send it back. That's pretty unusual, but for some people it happens more than others because they may have a rather aggressive delivery driver. When these computers leave the factory, they're fine. They pass all the QCs. But somehow in transportation, if damage is going to occur, that's how it occurs. Whether it's from the factory to the distribution center or from the distribution center to your front door, things can get mishandled and mistreated. For some of us, it very rarely happens, and for others, a little more common. So we want to make sure, even if we're building our own machine, that we built it correctly by just running through the basics of making sure Windows updates, that we're secure online, Security Center looks good, computer sounds good, it's not too loud, it's not too slow, and then we move on to phase 2. So phase 2, what we're doing today is more of the testing. It's more of the exploration because this machine is already pre-built. Now we get to see how fast is our NVMe drive and how does it come apart and how do we upgrade it. Once we've established all of that hardware customization and seen that the machine is still operating to our expectations, because again, you've got 30 days typically to return something. So it's really important to me and to all my clients, whenever they get a new machine from me, well, I've already made sure it's up to date and I've already made sure that everything on the hardware side is good. I do that for my clients and I want them to start putting in one application at a time for whatever they need, and I will assist them with that, including setting up email and printers. That's all the way at the end. So if you're not hiring somebody like me and you want to do this yourself and you want to do it the right way so you're not investing a bunch of time just to end up sending the product back, waiting for a replacement and starting all over again, follow phase 1, then phase 2, and phase 3 is go at it. You know, at that point now you should be solid. With that foundation in place and verified, you should be able to have a computer that's reliable unless you start opening it up and messing with it or spill something on it or drop it. Like, it should otherwise be good for many, many, many years. If you're too excited and you're too anxious and you're going to skip phase 1 and phase 2 and just jump right into phase 3, it might work out for you, it might not. If it doesn't, you'll just do it all over again. Haste makes waste. Now, because I'm working at scale, I'm working on a lot of machines all the time, I don't want to have to go back and redo another machine because it holds me back from doing the next one. So slower is faster. Slow and steady wins the race. And that's how I demonstrate here for how we really do it for people who take pride in their work. And also, if I were to buy a new machine, these are the steps I go through. If a customer calls me and says, I just bought a new computer at Best Buy and I need help setting it up, this is everything we do for that customer. Until we get to phase 3, we don't start putting anything on that machine. No printers, no email, no config. So that's where we're at. Now today, it is Wednesday, the 4th of December, 2024. Welcome in, everybody, and good to see all my friends in the chat. Say hello to everybody there. There's Colin Hilton. Our friend Buster with a 10-pound super chat says, good evening, Carey and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. Temperature in Edinburgh today is about 30 degrees cooler than it is in Phoenix today. They're at 48 degrees Fahrenheit or 8.8 degrees Celsius. We're probably going to be around 78 today, I think. Pretty nice out. Good to see you, Buster. Thank you as always. Chico48 says, does BozGame have a website to download drivers mainly for Wi-Fi internet? You know, I think we've only seen one BozGame mini PC, but I'll tell you what. Send an email to our channel with the make and model of the BozGame unit you have, and we can find the driver download for you and send you the link in email. You please use this email address on the screen, and we can provide that driver for you. Or we might need some more info. But first we need the exact model of boss game that you have. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? Charlie Purdy saying hello, and there's Mara in the chat room. David Graham joining us. There's my friend Ron Hillier. He says, I made it on time. Right on. Good to see you, Ron. Kurt Schlegel and Garfield Rupe saying hello. Charlie Purdy with a $10 super chat. Terry says hello. Welcome in, Terry. Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat says, if Carey is live, give him a high five. Right on. Thank you, Planet Cryos. Colin Hilton, as I mentioned before, you guys might remember, if you've been with the channel a long time, like Peter Laycock, Colin lives in the UK. He's in England. And he's the one who initially, at the time, had given us a very sizable contribution to buy a 4-port capture card. Because we were doing our live videos initially, I was always using these little USB capture cards. And at one point I had 3 or 4 of them, and they would overheat, they'd disconnect. And it was making the live videos very troubling. And the capture card we picked up was a Magewell Quad 4-input HDMI card. It was $899 plus sales tax. That was many years ago. We still use that card today, and it changed how we do live videos. Like, they're much more stable now. Sure, we've had other issues, from sound issues and internet connection issues. We haven't had any camera connection issues since then. And do you know that same capture card is still for sale today by the same company at the same price? How crazy is that? And we lost touch for a little bit there, but we reconnected again, and Colin was like, I'd really want to help the channel in some way. And I said, well, we don't really need anything. It'd be fun to play with a 4K capture card. And he has again provided us another capture card, which we don't have yet, but we'll get. And then we can play with 4K at that point. And it's from a different company. So we'll see if that works out. I've had capture cards, experimenting with capture cards from Blackmagic, and I did not like them. So we're going to give this one a shot, see if Blackmagic's gotten any better, or if maybe I've gotten a little better with what to expect on how the Blackmagic products are quite different to install than a traditional capture card. So it'll be an experiment just for fun. We don't need 4K, but I mean, the cameras are 4K. Everything is 4K but the capture card, and we'll play with it. All thanks to our friend Colin Hilton, who, once again, he's the capture man. I don't know what to say. He's a very nice, very generous fellow, friend, and he's been supportive for us here in ways behind the scenes you would never know. So I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge him, and for people that have been here a while who remember him. He took a little hiatus for a while, but he's back. We're always happy to see him, of course. In fact, of the 2 names I see right now, I know Peter Laycock and Colin Hilton's names are right there, right at the top of the original Community Threadripper build. So those 2 guys really stand out for me. And of course, Buster, Peter Laycock, hopefully we'll have some good news coming soon, and we'll just wait till hopefully next week, and we'll fill you in on what that is. Frankie B saying hello. Thank you again for that super generous contribution yesterday, Frankie. Another great friend of the channel. Frankie joins us from New York City. Or New York, anyway. To everybody that doesn't live in New York, for many of us, New York is New York City. If we see green grass, like Buffalo, we're like, that's not New York City. That's Jersey. Let's see. Joseph Jardisfer says hello to everyone. Welcome in. There's Phil Stodd and Eddie Casanova, Dustin Fuller, and Mark Gaines. Mark joins us from Northern Ireland. We were just talking to Colin how we have to get to England. We have so many of our friends that live in the UK, and we need to get out. And finally, I was in a position at Studio B where I was kind of locked in. Now that we're free of that, 2025 should see some travel. So we're excited about that. Maybe we get to meet some of these folks, if not all of these folks, in the UK. get to meet them face to face after so many years of talking to them virtually. I mean, they get to see me. I just don't get to see them or hear them. Frank Stafaro just became a supporter. Welcome in, Frank. Thank you so much. There's Richard DeFries, also joining us from Ireland, says hello. Welcome in, Richard. Andy Kane joining us as well, also from Ireland. See what I mean? We got to get to Ireland. We got to get to England. And if we're going to go, we have to get to Scotland if we're going to do that. And then the only thing remaining is Wales, so we might as well go do that too. I got a feeling this is going to be more than a 3-day trip, so I'm saying. Okay, so I want to get to phase 2 here. One of the things I noticed after the show last night was that these machines are more than just the same case. In fact, so this is an i7 with a 3070 graphics card. This is an i9. This is 11th gen. This is 14th gen i9 with a 4070 graphics card. And if you look, one is chunkier than the other. We got the fat boy and we got the slim boy. So it's more than just the same case, which is what I assumed when I first looked at it. It looks like the panels on the outside are the same. But this piece in the middle is much wider on this one, and that's going to be for the more aggressive cooling. I turned this one on and updated it last night after the show, and this one's much quieter, but it's also less powerful. Look, this isn't rocket science. If you want to get something super powerful, like an i9-14900 with a 4070, you can expect it's going to need more aggressive cooling. And when you're really pressing it, not when it's idle, but when you're really pressing it, you should expect to be able to hear it. Now, it shouldn't sound like a concert. You shouldn't need earplugs. It's not that loud, but it is as loud as any other gaming laptop would be. It's not any less quiet. On the other hand, to go back a couple generations here to an 11th gen i7, they also made this in an i5, and you can still find these online, oftentimes refurbished. These will probably sell for about $850. Both this and this was hard for me to get. They don't make a lot of these, so you may end up on a waiting list to get one. And they're rock solid machines. I got nothing to complain about. It's just that I want you to know when you're dealing with higher power machines, you're going to have a bigger power brick because it draws more power generates more heat requires more aggressive cooling. And when you start getting into a level of aggressive cooling, you need more room for heat pipes and fans. Hence, you can even tell the reason why it's going to be thicker. You can predict it. So what we're going to do today, we're going to measure the speed of the NVMe. I'm going to guess it's probably a general 4th gen Kingston. We know it's a Kingston drive, but it's probably going to be about 5,000 megabytes per second. And we can use a Cronus and clone that over to one of our 4 terabyte Western Digital black drives. These will do 7,300 megabytes per second. Now, we don't have to put this in an enclosure or anything. We can just pop it into the second NVMe slot, in theory, run a Cronus and do an internal copy. Should happen like that. And then just take the Kingston out or reformat it if you want to use it as a D drive. I do not want to use it. I'll pull it out, and then we'll just keep one drive in there. With regards to this unit here, we have a video review of this up from, I don't know, 2 years ago when we first got it. This was a very difficult machine for me to get, so it's near and dear to my heart. And I'm going to just set it aside for now so we have room to work, but I just wanted to give you that update. That in fact, it is a different case. It's much wider. Also, there's some slight difference on the USB ports. Let me pull this up one more time. If you look at the front, we still have the same power button and power button here with, power button and fan control, meaning how much power do we want to use, lower power, higher power. That's still the same. But notice we have a couple of USB ports, type A here, the memory card reader, full-size SD card reader, and then another type A here. Over here, we've got we've got 2 type A's separated apart like that. Same memory card reader, but there's no type C up front. There's no third type A the way this one does. If we come around the back, if you recall, I had some problems with the Ethernet cable not clicking into the port. I never really looked into this because it doesn't have to click in to make a connection, but when I go to click this in, it never clicks. And I tried, at the time when I was reviewing this, I tried adjusting the case cover and everything to see if it's not fully seating. Oh, and there, it just clicked in, but it didn't make any sound. That was kind of a concern I had with this, was why this cable wasn't plugging in right. Yeah, it sits in there a little wonky, like something's just not seated right. But once it's in, it makes a solid connection, but if you pull on the cable, it'll pop out. Instead of pull the whole machine off the table, which, you know, that's what the tab is for, to lock it in. Now this one doesn't have that problem. I will get the positive click when I install that. I don't know if you heard it, it's very, very minor, but it locks in as it should. And I think there was just something in manufacturing, I don't know. But anyway, we've got a single HDMI with a single Thunderbolt Type-C port back here. And here we have a single HDMI and a Type A, so that one that's missing from the front is now in the back. We have Thunderbolt here as well with our audio power input. So things have been moved around. You essentially get the same amount of ports. It's just instead of 3 on the front, we've got 2 in the front here. And instead of 1 in the back, we have, oh, maybe not. Maybe not. Hold on. It might just be 1 short. So they both have 1 Type A and 1 Type C in the back. So the older unit actually has 1 additional USB port for some reason. That sure would have been welcomed over here. It's not like anybody complains they ever have too many USB ports. Either unit, I'm telling you, you could be very happy with these. Depending on what level of graphics, you know, 3070 versus 4070, i7 11th gen versus an i9 14th gen. You know, 32 threads on this bad boy. Obviously, this one is going to be more expensive. That should be obvious to you. And I mean, nearly twice as expensive. Because if you can pick these up refurbished for about $850, you're going to be close to $1,600 on this guy right here, already equipped with 32 gigs and 1 terabyte. If you order it bare bones, you can get it for about $1,200 or 11 and change. And we've got links to these in the video description. I'm not here to make a commercial for Minisforum. I just genuinely like their products. And I want to use one of these, this one specifically, as my main go-to machine and live with it. That was my intention on this one, and I just never got around to it. But I promise you, once we're done with phase 2, I'm going to enter into phase 3, which a lot of these machines never see until they go to a customer. This one will enter phase 3 for me, which is to put Office on it, configure my email, configure my printers, you know, map my network drive to the NAS, etc., etc. All of the personalization that I do that is unique for me. So, okay, let me put this back. Let's get back to where we were. I want to plug this in, turn it on, and the first thing I want to do is take a look at Crystal Disk Mark and see what kind of numbers we're getting. I expect about 5,000. When you're buying an NVMe drive and you see one is like 2 terabytes for $100, Gen 4, it's probably about 5,000 megabytes per second. If you see it for $129 and you're like, oh, that's a $30 difference, the same 2 terabytes. Now, in most cases, you're going to find that instead of 5,000 megabytes per second, it does 7,300 megabytes per second. Or somebody's trying to rip you off and sell you a drive that only does 5,000 at the same price. You could get a same capacity drive from a different manufacturer, be it Western Digital or Samsung or Beijing or any of these manufacturers. The prices can vary quite a bit, especially if you're looking at the big name brands like Western Digital and Samsung. I have found cheaper prices at westerndigital.com than what Newegg and Samsung are offering for the exact same drives, and Western Digital's including a free 128 gig flash drive with your purchase. So not only is it cheaper, you also get a flash drive. Why wouldn't you? So always keep that in mind when you're ordering. Check the manufacturer's websites. A lot of manufacturers sell direct. Minisforum sells direct, or you can buy off Amazon, and you might find the price cheaper at Minisforum, maybe. And if so, it's probably because of Amazon's commission, right? Because they're not selling things for free over there from third parties. But you do get that Amazon 30-day guarantee. Minisforum offers the same thing. Amazon may ship faster, they may not. It depends where it's coming from. So depending on what's important to you, it's always worthwhile to check the manufacturer's website for any major name brand that you're buying, because you might see a good price at Amazon, but there might be a better price direct from the manufacturer. All right, so that's a little tip from your Uncle Carey. Let's keep going here. I've got my Ethernet cable and my HDMI cable to plug back in. Yeah, this was all unplugged so I could update the other unit. And, you know, it's got 24H2, the whole typical thing. Just did that off camera. You can understand why we do these updates typically off camera, for the amount of time they can take. But if we don't show that to you, then you may have an unrealistic expectation when you order a new machine, whether it's a laptop, a mini PC, or even build one, on how much time you really need to put into it just to get it ready. It's not a toaster. You don't just plug it in the wall and start using it. If you do, you may be an immediate victim of some identity theft. And it's very, very important you understand how dangerous the internet is, and that it's always becoming more dangerous every day as more and more people get online, and more people in other countries that basically have zero law enforcement for any crimes that are being committed over the internet into another country. They're like, hey, as long as you're not doing that in our country, like Russia, we're good with it. You can hack all the people you want, just don't hack us. That's kind of an unspoken rule in Russia. They've got nothing to lose by trying, okay? And you've got nothing to lose by making sure you're fortified before you go out there and put yourself on the internet or start personalizing the machine with your private data or preferences. You don't have to, but you really should take it seriously. And a lot of people, they think, oh, you know, it's never happened, and so it's never going to happen. And you know, you keep thinking that way. See how that works out. I can only tell you that I've been in the career that I've had for over 30 years, and I've got thanks to a lot of hackers for keeping me employed to undo the damage that they cause to people's machines. Let's go ahead and turn this back on, and we're going to come back over here to camera input number 2. There we go. And then as soon as it starts up, Crystal Diskmark is what I want to run. Let's see, Planet Cryos with a $5 super chat says, that clip is for if you trip over it. Exactly, the PC goes down with you too. Yeah, that little Ethernet clip, that's what I'm saying. I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of good, it just falls out if it's pulled on. On the other hand, it doesn't feel right that it doesn't give me that satisfying click when I plug it in. Most of the time, people are going to use these wireless anyway, so it's probably irrelevant. The Wi-Fi in Studio C here is faster than a 1 gig network cable. In fact, it's 2.5 times. We get 2.5 megabytes per second on our Wi-Fi here. Whereas a wired 1 gig, well, you can do the math. How many times does 1 go into 2.5? So our Wi-Fi here is faster than a wired 1 gig. And since this is all 1 gig connections on both of these Minisforum PCs, it would be in my best interest, especially on this new one, which is Wi-Fi 7. With Wi-Fi 7, I will achieve that full 2.5 gig wireless connection, which is insanity. That's crazy fast. Andy Kane renews membership, now a member for 16 months. Thank you, Andy. He says, glad to be a part of this great community. Or you're a part of what makes this community great. Thank you, Andy. Zach Bischoff renews membership, now a member for 23 months. He says, hello, Carey, and everyone in chat. Happy to be a part of this community for nearly 2 years. You rock, Zach. Thank you so, so much. We certainly appreciate having you here, and we're so glad you're part of what we're doing here. Now, let me go back over to the desktop. I have to make it full screen the way you guys see it. And then we're going to come over here to, let's see, Crystal Diskmark. Let's do that first. And we're going to run all the tests. Now, of course, if you watch this channel for a while, you know I'm most interested in the best the drive can ever do. That's a sequential read and a sequential write. What that's telling us is the drive will never perform any faster than this. That's what I want to know. what does it top out at in a best case scenario? And we should be seeing around 5,000. Now, honestly, when you're at 4,600, it's a little bit away. 4,700, we're close. In most cases, a human being couldn't tell the difference between 4,700 and 5,500. You may not even be able to tell the difference between 3,600 and 7,200. You reach a point of diminishing returns where, you know, your Windows is only going to load so fast, your eyes are only going to read so fast, you're only going to type so fast. And so unless you have, you know, what comes to mind are games that have big levels that load, or if you've got some other I/O intense application, which most of you don't have, you may see the difference in performance. Mostly we're just chasing benchmarks. For me, it's about making sure I'm getting what I paid for. So it's not that I'm going to see a difference. It's that I paid for it, and so therefore I want to see it. And as long as we're in the ballpark in or around 5,000, close enough. If this is down in the 3,000 range, not good enough, because now you might as well be Gen 3. There's no point having Gen 4 if you're in the 3,000 range. Especially if you paid for a Gen 4 drive, that makes it even less acceptable. And when I'm shopping for Gen 4 drives, I'm going to look at that. It's always rated for the megabytes per second. It'll be somewhere on the Amazon page or on the product page. You might have to look for it. Sometimes it's right up on the headline. Other times it's down in the product description. You got to dig down a little bit for it. But usually that is aligned with the price. So if you see, hey, you know, Newegg has a brand of NVMe drive you never heard of before. It's 2 terabytes. It's $92. What do you think you're going to get? You think you're going to get a rocket ship? Do you think you're going to get a drive that, as it fills up, isn't going to start getting slower and slower the fuller it gets? And what about support? Is the company going to be easy to get access to for any help or warranty? And oftentimes, these cheaper drives will only have a 3-year warranty versus a 5-year warranty. Now, when you buy a machine from Minisforum, it doesn't matter who makes the RAM and who makes it, just like Dell or HP. It all gets warrantied through the PC manufacturer, not through the part manufacturer. That way they can buy the parts cheaper and warranty it themselves. So if you did have a problem, if you had ordered the Minisforum or any brand of PC, and you had a RAM or storage problem, you would contact the PC manufacturer. Now, Minisforum has a 2-year warranty on everything, and they have a 30-day returns period the same. And they even have their own YouTube channel if you guys want to check them out. Now, looking back at our crystal disk mark, I'm looking at 3896 on the write speed. That disgusts me. Honestly, that's barely Gen 4. On a high-end Samsung Evo, let's say, Gen 3 drive, we could achieve over 3,000 on the writes. And when every generation doubles, so if the max on Gen 3 is 3,600, then the max on Gen 4 is 7,200. And the max on Gen 5 is 15,000. And the max on the upcoming Gen 6 should be twice that at 30,000. Again, you're going to reach a point of diminishing returns where you're not even going to notice it except in your wallet. But if I paid for it, I want to see it on the screen, regardless if I'm using it or not. Otherwise, give me my money back and I'll go buy the cheaper one. So this drive's going to go. I am not a fan of this drive in a computer this high-end, and I want to explain why. Some people were going to hear hypocrisy there, and it's not a hypocrisy. It has to do with pairing the parts appropriately for the machine they're built in. So if we've got a high-end, highest-end, 14th Gen 14900, we've got great Micron-made Crucial RAM, DDR5. All of that is up here. And then we stick an industrial mid-range Gen 4 drive in there, like we do with all the other mini PCs. That is our choke point. That's our bottleneck. That is the one part that's not like the others. So in that case, for me, I would order this Barebone. I don't have any problem with the RAM. At 32 gigs, that's more than I need. It's probably more than most of us need. I will probably use somewhere between 16 and 32. If I have to use more than 32, it'll swap over to the fast NVMe drive, right? That's where you may notice some sluggishness. I don't need 64 gig in this or 96 gig. I could put it in, but I'm telling you that'll waste my money. I'll never use it. At least I won't, in the foreseeable future, unless my needs change, I'll wait until I need it because it only gets cheaper. To do it now is going to cost me more. Future-proofing is a nonsense word in a sense, in a way, because you're paying for something at today's prices instead of waiting until you need it, and you may never need it. But if in fact you do, upgrade when you need to, the price will be cheaper. So we're leaving the RAM alone. I think that's fine. That NVMe is completely mismatched to the rest of the system. And so that puts me on the fence because if you order at Barebone, you're going to have to provide your own storage, RAM, and operating system. By ordering it the way I did, it's out of the box ready to plug in and you don't have to take anything apart and worry about compatibility and everything else. It takes your risks down and you can immediately start using it. Now, you know, decide for yourself what's right for you. But for me, it makes more sense to just order it the way they've already tested it at the factory. We know everything's compatible. And there really has never been a compatibility problem that I've ever experienced with an NVMe drive. That's a safe thing. But with RAM, and then sourcing your operating system, and then you've got to go and get the drivers, it's kind of a pain. Having that already done for me, so all I have to do is clone the NVMe, is a more preferred way of achieving what I need. Also, I didn't know what NVMe it came with. They're not real clear about it in the product page, nor is anybody ever on mini PCs, or even laptops for the most part. They'll say it's Gen 4, but it, you know, that can mean a lot. Gen 4's got a range of 3,800 megabytes per second to 7,400, 7,200, 7,400. That's why this drive is rated at 7,300, right down there on the corner of the box. Doesn't mean we're going to get 7,300, but we should get pretty darn close. And if we're at 30, like on the write speed there, 3,800, I'll bet you we'll see a write speed of twice, well, not twice, but nearly twice that on this. And it's the same, takes up the same space. Anyway, and this is going to be a 4 terabyte, whereas this one's only a 1 terabyte. So we're going to triple the amount of space we've got, as well as nearly double our speeds. Or at least increase them by 30 to 40% on reads and writes. I'm going to go back full screen over here for a moment and save that screen so we can compare them before and after, right? So this is our before picture. And I'm going to come over here. We're going to go to File, Save Image, and we'll do Crystal Disk Mark Kingston 1 terabyte Gen 4. We're going to save that as a JPEG image, and we're going to put it right here on our desktop. Okay, Cinebench. Let's run Cinebench on this and see what kind of heat we're looking at. Now, Minisforum has already found, from what I understand, the perfect balance of performance and heat. Any more performance, it might overheat. Any less performance, you'll be leaving performance on the table. They've already engineered that. You don't need to go in the BIOS and play around with it, because you'll probably only make it worse one way or the other. It's at the perfect balance point. At least that's my understanding. So let me go back over to the hardware info, and let's start by looking at what our temps are right now, just under normal idle usage. Right, just under the few things we've done, we've not asked the CPU to do much. We're not being too demanding on the system. And let's see where we're at right now. Okay, we're looking at temps right now ranging in the 40 to 50 range, which is warm. It's not hot, but it's warm. We've certainly had some big desktops here with large liquid coolers that could be in the upper 30s, low 40s. You should expect a bit more coming out of a laptop or an enclosed space with an air cooler. This is not terrible. This is, in fact, as it's dropping now into the 40s, a few degrees warmer. But again, anytime you're dealing in a small enclosed space, you should expect higher temps because you just don't have the space for a large liquid or air cooler, right? We're doing the best we can with the limited amount of space we have. And that's fine. In fact, you'll see it dropping into the 30s and low 40s, just like a desktop right now as it sits. But what will it do when we beat the crap out of it with some heavy resource task workload? So we're going to bring up Cinebench, and Cinebench is a very unrealistic simulated test that does not represent the likelihood of typical computer usage, and certainly not for 10 minutes per test. There are people out there that do this, but very few actually. And for them, this may not be a good machine. If that's what you intend to do with this machine on a regular basis, you're underbuying for your needs. It's like you bought a 4-cylinder car and you want to treat it like it's a race car. And you know, if it's an F1 4-cylinder engine that runs at 10,000 RPM, that's a different beast. But for a regular everyday car, if you try to take a regular sedan off-road, you might be okay, or you might get stuck. It wasn't designed for that. And if you're going to do that all the time, you're probably going to break the car. We're going to hit start on the test, and we're going to bring up our let me just go up here, our heat results here, and we'll keep an eye on it. What we're watching for those of you that aren't familiar with this test, let me just move it over here maybe. We're looking at current temperatures, or current, whatever it is we're reading on the left. So there's all our performance cores and our efficiency cores. These are our current temperatures on the left. In the middle, this is the minimum temperatures recorded, the lowest temperatures since we started this piece of software, the monitoring software. And on the right here, it says maximum. This is going to tell us what our peak temperatures are, and it'll hold that peak and reserve it. I hear those fans ramping up. We know the machine is doing some work. And we'll see what our maximum temps get to on this. Once we're finished with the multi-core test, we'll do the single core test, and we'll get those numbers, benchmark numbers, and we'll get our maximum recorded temps down this right side. The important thing, you know, and again, if you're curious about how much wattage we're pulling, you can see our CPU package power right here at 90 watts, just shy of 90 watts on the low side, and upwards of 115 watts. When it's getting up to 115 watts, it's going to really be processing a lot of information. It's going to get really, really hot. It may thermal throttle, but it should do so momentarily. It should almost be, you know, look, computers, they react very quickly. And so if a computer starts getting hot and it throttles, it generally only throttles for a second. Like a human being probably wouldn't even notice it. If you're throttling to a point where your machine is getting sluggish, you have an inadequate cooler on your machine, or you were overvolting your processor. It's typically only one of those two things. Or if you built it yourself, your cooler isn't put on correctly, or the thermal application has not been applied properly. It's not normal is all I'm trying to get to. Something needs repaired. Something needs to be looked at. So here, so far, we're seeing a maximum of 89 degrees Celsius. Usually within the first 90 seconds of this test is when we see our high temps, and the same when we run the second test. So while that runs, let me just poke my head back into the chat over here to see what you guys are saying while we wait for the test to complete. Ron Barnes joins us and says hello. Welcome in, Ron. Phil Stodd says hello, and Al Perez joins us along with Paul Howe. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. David Graham with a $2 super chat sings us jingle bells. It's that time of year. Happy holidays to everybody. Hope you're having a great holiday season. I'm so sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. But, you know, I showed off those refurbished Asus 1000 watt power supplies and how inexpensive they were. I got my first, I ordered two. One for the Asus build and one as a spare. And they're brand new in the box. So I went on to Amazon because they had 18 available when I showed you guys. And the price went up a few dollars, and they only had one left in stock. I was going to order two more just to have them at $123 a piece. And I'm like, why do they have so many refurbished ones? You know, why have they been returned? It's coming from Amazon warehouse. It's a good $30 less than the new price, which isn't terrible at $155. But anyway, they arrived today and they're brand new. They've never been opened. So if they're refurbed at the factory. They're not something somebody ordered off Amazon and returned. Then you got to wonder, did I get all my cables? You know, did they return everything? These are brand new in a box. So I went on to order 2 more. And I said, that's it, just 2 more and I'm good. I can only get 1. That's all they had left. So I think you guys took advantage of the deal, and good for you. So you should have. If not, you missed out. And I missed out too. I've never ordered them before. I wasn't sure what I was getting. So they arrived today. Now that I see what they are, I wanted 2 more. You know, too late. I do have 1 more for a little bit more money than what I paid. But I think if it arrives like these did, they're just brand new. Great deal. Assuming they're good power supplies. I've not worked with ASUS power supplies in a long, long time. But I have every faith to believe they're going to be fine. I also like at 1,000 watts, some power supplies are much longer. And that makes the fitment in the case a bit tighter. These are the standard. They don't look any different. I appreciate that. We're waiting on 1 more part to come in for the ASUS Z390 ProArt build. And that's why I'm tentatively scheduling Mitch for Friday. I want you to be aware that if the parts come in tomorrow that we need for the ASUS build, then we'll reschedule Mitch. I'm not planning on that happening, and I hate to change things last minute with Mitch, but I think Mitch is pretty accommodating. So Friday, we're either going to do the ASUS ProArt continuation of part 2, or Mitch will be over. We're going to do the upgrade of one of his computers from a Gen 8 to a Gen 13 upgrade. And that means replacing the motherboard, the RAM, CPU, the cooler, and potentially the storage. Nothing wrong with his Gen 3 storage. It's not slow to him at all. Just because your motherboard will support Gen 4 or Gen 5 doesn't mean that's what you have to use. You could save money, go to the previous gen of storage. It'll run slower by comparison, but for most people, as I mentioned, you're probably not going to see any difference. So that's at your discretion. And we'll see what Mitch wants to do. But right now, as of today, Wednesday at 1:45 in the afternoon here in Phoenix, Friday could go either way. So prepare to be surprised. Well, it's going to be one or the other. I'm not holding my breath on the parts arriving on time just because, you know, the way delivery services get during this time of year. If anything's going to arrive late or damaged, the closer we get to the holidays, the more likely the delays and damage are. However, it's also possible it does arrive on time in good condition. So because of those variables, once we have the answers, we'll be able to definitively decide what happens on Friday. Either way, we're covered. So hopefully you'll join us Friday at 1 o'clock. As always, 1 o'clock p.m. is Phoenix time. Pacific time is an hour earlier, and Eastern time's 2 hours later. So 3 o'clock on the East Coast, 1 p.m. here in Phoenix, 12 p.m. on the Pacific Coast, the West Coast. Elijah 52 Dickens renews membership now for 26 months. A loyal member. Right on. Thank you, Elijah 52 Dickens, for renewing your membership, staying with us here in our tech club, along with a $20 super chat contribution as well. You rock. Thank you so much, Elijah. Luke Gradius says, dang, time flies. I've been a member for 2 years, 6 months, and 23 days. Man, you're counting it down like you're in jail. Mortant 1210 joins us and says hello. Welcome in. So the fans on this sound exactly like a gaming laptop where you're in the middle of doing something intensive. It could be even gaming, right, depending on the game. And it's uncanny how much that sounds exactly like a gaming laptop. It's not, as I mentioned, it's not too loud, but it definitely lets you know, I'm working over here. Yeah. Luke says, it's a great jail. Try to get on the warden's good side, are you? Did you come in to hear it?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Can you hear it on the mic?
Very mildly.
Yeah.
And that's why I came over, because I wanted to hear it first.
It's just like a gaming laptop.
Yeah. And
you have your, what's your gaming laptop? It's pretty old, that big monster. Alienware that weighs like 27 pounds.
It's 17-inch, yeah.
It gets louder than this.
It's a wonderful laptop.
But it's louder than
like
this. It can get.
So at my gaming parties, well, that's hard to say because I always had earphones on. Yeah, a little bit.
Well, now with noise canceling headphones, you probably wouldn't hear it at all.
Yeah, and so I heard it a little bit, but yeah, but actually, yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, this does sound like
that's not an idle, but keep in mind, this is not an idle fan noise. Right. This is like I'm giving it everything I've got noise.
Yeah, no, when I was gaming, yeah, it was.
By the way, when you're giving it everything you got when you're gaming, you can get kind of loud too. You son of a! I'll get you.
That's only when I PvP, because I will kick your butt.
All I'm saying is,
yeah,
when criticizing the fan noise, sometimes you got to criticize the noise of the fan that's playing. You could say you're a gaming fan, and as a gaming fan, you also can get be a very noisy fan.
This is true. And then if you get angry enough, watch out, because you're going outside to kick something.
Well, maybe that's the downside. You could flip this like a boomerang out the window versus the Apache helicopter. You would need 2 fully grown men to lift that up and throw it out the window for you.
Right.
Oh, they're cooling down. We must be getting close. I mean, the fans are quieting down. Yeah, it did finish the test. Okay, and then our maximum temps. Let's see, where did we hit? It says 91 is the max we've hit, and it may be thermally junctioning at 91. Let's find out by running the second test and see if we can exceed 91. If we can exceed 91, then likely that's not a thermal limit. On the other hand, if 91 remains our max, it's probably set in the BIOS not to exceed 91. Nothing wrong with that. That keeps us again at that peak performance without leaving anything on the table and without overheating or overstressing our chip, because overstressing your chip from time to time is not a big deal. The problem gets to be when you're doing it constantly. It causes a rapid degradation of the silicon, meaning don't expect to get 10 years out of it if you're going to do that. Same with a car, by the way. If you're going to hammer on your car every time you get in it, you can expect more maintenance, more repairs, and a shorter lifespan on the engine. But from time to time, once in a while, I mean, that's what it's designed to do. All right, we're starting our other test here. Again, now I see 93. That's good to see. That means 91 was not a thermal limit. That's just literally how hot it got. It never reached 92. And again, that's on the entire package here. Sometimes you'll see one core. This one says Performance Core 3 is actually hitting 93. And all the other cores are significantly cooler. We're seeing this. Now the E cores, they're not going to get that hot. They're just efficiency cores. They don't run as high of a voltage. Your focus will be on your performance cores. We've got 8 of those, and we just want to make sure that, yeah, so P core 7 to P core 0, that's 8. Because 0 is 1, and then 1 is 2, and 2 is 3, et cetera, et cetera. Lows in the 30s, that's normal, what you typically see on a desktop. Current temps are running in the 50s. And our high temps, which it momentarily hit and came back down, that's the way it's supposed to work, at 93. All right, so that's likely going to be our maximum. Well, just as I said it went to 94 up here. Now, on these chips, probably 100 degrees Celsius is going to be your thermal junction. We want to stay clear of 100. I mean, you could be at 99. You could run it at 99 and it's fine. However, it is going to degrade that chip if you're constantly running it at 99. But yeah, if you're running it at 99, even a couple hours out of the day, you know, as long as that's not every day. If it was every day, I'd suggest you either under-purchased a computer for your needs, your cooler's not on correctly, or you have an inadequate cooling system. One of the benefits that you have of buying a pre-built computer, or at least what it should be, is the manufacturer's done all this work for you. They've already engineered the cooling and the case and the airflow. They've done all that. They put on the thermal compound, in this case liquid metal from Minisforum, that needs to be put on by a machine in order for it to last. If you do it by hand, it's going to oxidize within a year. You'll have to replace it. You're going to notice your temps getting hotter next year than this year. When you apply it with precision that a machine can give it and seal it, you are going to have a thermal compound that lasts just like any other thermal compound. It won't oxidize for many, many years. So in that case, don't take the heatsink off, because you are not going to improve that thermal compound. You can only make it worse, and you will likely never get it back to factory. I'm just telling you, leave that heatsink on. Now in 5 or 6 years, different story, but when it's new and under warranty for 2 years, do not take that heatsink off. If you have heat-related problems and you haven't modified the machine, that's a warranty issue. Don't void your warranty and damage your computer, potentially, by trying to DIY when it's under warranty. I mean, you can if you want to. I don't know why you do that. Now, when you're on to beyond year 2, then you got nothing to lose, have at it. But just keep in mind, Uncle Carey warned you, you're probably going to make it worse. If you've collected a lot of dust and stuff in there, obviously you want to blow that out and clear out the areas where the fans are, just like you would on a laptop. They can collect. Because this sits upright, it shouldn't be anywhere near as bad as a laptop that sits flat on your lap. But dust will get in there, and that will more likely impede your cooling ability than any thermal compound will. So first thing I would do if I was running in, over 2 years' time and the machine seemed like it was running hotter than normal, and I'm out of warranty, I open that up, make sure all those fans, inputs and outputs are all clear with my canned air. And then, look for anything. Sometimes there's lint in there. And you can get some tweezers and pull the lint out like you would out of a clothes dryer. It can get that thick on laptops. You can imagine that's suffocating the airflow. And just simply that simple procedure could put it right back to factory like new on the cooling. If it doesn't, then you can look at other alternatives. But I would stick with the simple first. You're less likely going to damage anything, and more often than not, that is the solution. So a max temp has hit 94. Okay, good. If we scroll down here, again, we can look at how much wattage we're pulling. So maximum 115 to the CPU here. We've got our PL1 and PL2 limits set at 90 watts on the PL1, 115 watts on the PL2. Remember, this is a mobile chip. It's not a desktop chip. More watts, more heat, more aggressive cooling, the louder it's going to get when you have it in a really confined space. You have a big tower, then you have room for, much more elaborate, larger cooling solutions and radiators and such. We don't have that luxury here. GPU temperature, GPU power, GPU clock. Remember, this has a mobile RTX 4070 in it. So you're looking at 1440p AAA title gaming here. And we're talking decent frames per second. Obviously, it depends on the game, but like a modern AAA title, Black Myth Wukong or something like that, you're easily going to hit 60 frames to 100 frames a second, depending on your settings. I should condition that at 1080. At 1440, you're going to be lower than that, but it should be, I don't know if I had to guess. Essentially, if you look up any benchmarks, any gaming benchmarks on a mobile RTX 4070, they're all pretty much going to be the same. It doesn't matter what the RTX 4070 is in. It could be in a laptop, a mini PC. It's the same chip with the same drivers, running the same games at that resolution. You should be right there at the exact same, right in the ballpark of the same frames per second of those resolutions. using the mobile RTX 4070, doesn't matter what board it's on. It's unlikely somebody's going to pair that RTX 4070 with like an i5 or something. So the manufacturers generally already balance the parts out for you. There may be some exceptions, but we don't have to go through all the benchmarks for gaming on this RTX 4070 because plenty of people have already done that on YouTube. And just look at what those benchmarks are. But understand the mobile 4070 is going to use less power, and it doesn't perform as well as a desktop 4070. In fact, a desktop 4060 Ti probably performs better than a mobile 4070. But it's also bigger, much bigger card. It draws more power. So set your expectations accordingly. There's no magic being done here. It's all very logical. And we've got, let's see, a minute and a half left here, and we'll be done with this test. But we're good on this. Like, as far as I'm concerned, 94 as a peak momentary temp on one core, there's nothing to fix here. That is exactly the way it was engineered. It's running just the way the engineers wanted it to. They want to take you right up close to the ceiling, and they don't want to keep you up there very long, and they also don't want to lower your power so your performance goes down the toilet so that your CPU stays cool. So we get that balance, right? When you need it, it cranks up, gets hot, but not too hot. And of course, you can always push the button in the front and lower your GPU wattage. And you also have the built-in GPU. You can go into the BIOS and disable the main GPU. I don't know why you would, but that also reminds me, I want to show you this BIOS because it's very different from Minisforum. It's similar to other BIOSes you may have seen before, but not from Minisforum. That's why we're going to show it to you here. As soon as this is done, we'll restart and take a look in there because it needs to be looked at. With two M.2 drives, you can put this in a RAID 0 or RAID 1. I would not recommend a boot drive to be a RAID array. Always make that a data drive. It can be very difficult to try and repair any sort of problem with your drive. It could be a virus or ransomware, and you're trying to remove a virus, or you've got data corruption. You can't just boot to anything. It won't see your C drive. It won't see your RAID array without special RAID drivers for that specific controller. And that means you need another computer if you hadn't made it ahead of time. And how would you know what you need ahead of time before you need it? If you just leave the C drive alone and you have other M.2 drives that you can configure for faster, like RAID 0, striped storage, super fast reads and writes, that's the way you should do it. So if we had 3 M.2s on here, we could use one for the boot and the other 2 for a RAID 0 fast data or large capacity storage array. But because we only have the 2 drives, I don't recommend it. Now on the Asus ProArt, we have 5 M.2s. So we're going to boot from the Gen 5 fast one, and the other 4 will be a large, fast Gen 4 array of 1 terabyte drives. 4 of them in RAID 0 will run at, in theory, 4 times the speed of a single one with 4 times the capacity. So that gives us 4 terabytes on 4 drives. That'll be a drive D. We will not boot to it. That way, if there's any problems with that RAID array, we can always boot to our C drive to address it. If there's any problems with our C drive, we just boot to any ordinary boot drive to fix it. When you have to boot to a very specific RAID-injected driver boot disk, boy, that's a way to start hating computers. Let me tell you, it is nothing I find enjoyment in. It's just one frustration after the other because, quite frankly, when you're trying to repair something, you might try a number of different boot disks, and every single one of those you're going to have to customize with that RAID driver, or it will not see your drives. So, I mean, it might as well be BitLocker at this point because it is difficult, time-consuming. If you like a good challenge, then go right ahead. Even Acronis programs like that, they're just probably not going to see your RAID array without you manually putting those drivers on. So it does take a bit more technical familiarity to do that. Your average home user, everything I just said might as well be in another language. So if you're that average user, stay away from it. Where I use RAID regularly, of course, is on a network attached storage drive. And that's designed to run RAID. I wouldn't run it in any other way. That's what it's designed for. So, different equipment runs different ways. I'm not going to take a non-four-wheel drive vehicle off-road if I can avoid it, not on purpose. I'm not going to try and turn my minivan into a convertible. It's not what it's designed for. So we have the right tools, we use them in the right way. It may seem random to people who don't understand the logic behind it, but that's why these variations of options exist, to meet the individual's needs. Not everybody wants or needs a two-door sports car that's convertible. Not everybody wants a hybrid or an electric car. Some people want the biggest SUV they can get. Some people want a big SUV that can go off-road, et cetera, et cetera. Some people want great gas mileage. Somebody wants more power. Somebody wants more storage space. Somebody wants something easy to park in a crowded urban area. All right, test is finished. Looks like 1971 on test, second single-core test here, and our first test multi-core 24134. It's fast. That is fast. And if we look at our maximum temps throughout that entire testing process, which is over 20 minutes, we're hitting a max of 94. It'd be nice if we saw some sort of a clock that give you an idea of just how quickly 94 came and went. So just because we touched 94 doesn't mean we sat there for a while and burned our butts. That's what you want to watch for. Now again, 94 is still well under 100. We want to definitely avoid 100. And 99 should be making you sweat. When I build desktops, I don't even like to see 94. But that also, one could argue, means that I'm leaving some performance on the table. I could get a little bit more out of it by overclocking or changing that PL1 and PL2, the power levels, a little bit more until we find where that specific chip can go to hit 94, 95 momentarily. I don't do that. I leave it the way the engineers designed it. In this case, Minisforum engineers designed this, and they've already worked all this out for you. If you think you can do better, hey, I'm not telling you you can't, I'm just telling you you shouldn't. But that's on you. Now let me close this all out, and let's go to the BIOS. Now I'm going to just try and do it the old school way, right? Of just hitting delete as soon as we restart. See if I get the timing right. Otherwise, I can go into the control panel or the settings, and I can have it reboot in advanced startup mode and have it manually automatically go into the BIOS for us. So delete, delete, delete over and over and over again. Remember, this does not work on a Bluetooth keyboard, and I have obviously missed the opportunity because you see the little toilet bowl flushing? That's what it looks like to me. You won't see that when you're going into a BIOS. You've got to hit that delete key, or maybe it's the wrong key I'm hitting. Could be F2. It's not always the same on these pre-builts, whether it's from Dell or HP or Acer or Razer or Minisforum or Ace Magic or anybody. They're not always delete. Most of the time, but not always. You don't have to worry about it. All you got to do is go into your settings and then into Windows Update. Then you're going to go to Advanced Options. Then you're going to go to Recovery. Then you're going to go to Advanced Startup. That's what we're looking for. And hit Restart Now. Then we're going to get an Advanced Startup menu. And we have the option to boot to a USB drive. We have the option to boot in safe mode. We have the option to go to the command prompt. We want the option to go directly into the BIOS or the UEFI. So when this restarts, you're going to see a different menu come up. This takes about 3 or 4 more clicks because it's kind of hidden. Now we still have the toilet bowl flushing, but it said please wait, which it didn't say before. That's how we know we're going into a different menu. We want to go to Troubleshoot. Then we want to go to Advanced, and then we're going to go to UEFI Firmware Settings and then hit Restart. Now with my hands off, it's simply going to restart into the BIOS, and we don't have to worry about any of that messy hitting the right key at the right time nonsense. Now let me get rid of camera 1 so you can fully appreciate this new graphical user interface in the BIOS, because it's pretty nice. Now here you can see fast boot is enabled, Wake on LAN. We've never really talked about Wake on LAN. I don't see any reason why we should. If folks want to know more about that, it's typically just a way to shut your computers off, say at an office. This is typically where Wake on LAN is used. People go home, they shut their computers off, And the IT staff needs to work on those computers after everybody's gone home. And they need to be able to turn on 100 or 1,000 computers from one main workstation on the IT side. They can have those computers power on. And then they can do whatever they need to do and shut them back off again. This saves the company a lot of money and electricity usage if they have thousands of computers running over the weekend for no reason. So this allows us to remotely turn on the machines. It's a little complicated, but it's not rocket science, but it does involve a little bit of programming on the router. Now, you can see here fast boot, as I mentioned, wake on LAN. We've got information regarding the BIOS version. We've got the amount of memory installed, the processor that's installed, the current speed. Remember, this processor will crank up to what, 5.8, I think. There's our RTX 4070 laptop GPU that has its own 8 gigs of RAM, by the way. That's our NVMe we're going to pull out, the 1 terabyte Kingston. We can see the fan speeds, and the button on the front of the case puts us either in work mode or game mode, right? Whether we do that in the BIOS, through that software I showed you yesterday, or through the button on the front of the machine, all three will work the same. If you want constant reliability and a reasonable fan noise, you want it in work mode. But if you're gaming and you want the best performance possible, you're going to have a bit more noise, a bit more power consumption, and you can switch back and forth through the software, the button, or in the BIOS. You'll notice down, oh, let's go to the right here, discrete GPU only. This is where we change the graphics card. Remember, we only have one video output on this, right? We have that one HDMI. Other than that, we'd have to break it out through the Thunderbolt port. Now, we could add 3 more monitors through that Thunderbolt port. However, this is our boot sequence, and this you can't change. This is just telling you we're using our discrete graphics card only. And by the way, discrete graphics cards sales have been dropping throughout all of 2024. Internal graphics cards built onto the CPUs are more popular than they've ever been, and discrete graphics cards are losing market share rapidly. So unless NVIDIA pulls a rabbit out of their hat, the future is going to be in integrated graphics expanding and getting better, not this discrete stuff. We are starting to reach the end of the line on discrete graphics cards. The end is just now starting. So it's not going to happen overnight, but already through 2024, they've had terrible sales. Now, don't get me wrong, NVIDIA's not hurting for money. Their AI is what's lining their pocketbooks, not their graphics cards. It's certainly not the same for AMD. And Intel decides, with the timing Intel has, the worst time to enter the discrete graphics market with the new Battlemage cards coming out, which are not even going to be high-end. Those are going to be like, 4060s, maybe 4070s at the most. And they're also not going to sell for as much money, right? $250 to $280. The first one should be out next week, or about 10 days from now. Now, let me just go to advanced mode here. And you will notice there's an update BIOS firmware, which is nice to see that sort of normalcy in these mini PCs. Now, under advanced mode, again, it's a lot more traditional to what we see in regular, when we're building motherboards, when we're building computers and we're buying our own boards, this is the kind of BIOS we're accustomed to seeing. You don't even typically get this on any pre-built computer like from Dell or Acer or HP. This is more of a DIY BIOS, which I really appreciate that. Now, there's nothing in here I'm recommending we change because, as I mentioned, they've already done all the work for us. But if you want to play around with it, there's power and performance, CPU management control. All of this has already been tuned, but it's tuned for the balance. If you don't want balance and you want it tuned one way at the cost of something else, well, here's where you can go and do that, where you could not do this in other mini PCs. We'll go over to chipset. The VMD technology, that's your RAID, right? That's if we wanted to turn RAID on, we would enable our virtual, what does that stand for? Virtual management. I can't remember. VMD was a thing they used in big corporations. And I'm not sure when VMD got introduced to consumer PCs, but this used to say RAID. And now it says VMD. I'm not sure what the difference is because I never had to deal with VMD in a corporate environment. And all I can tell you is if you want to enable RAID, you've got to enable VMD first. So I just have a ritual for that. I can't really explain it. I'm sure 5 seconds on Google, but then I won't retain it. You know, that'll explain what VMD difference is between that and just regular RAID. I think it allows you to maintain multiple RAID arrays, but then, I don't know, you could do that with RAID anyway, I thought. Again, it's a business thing that has trickled down into the consumer space. But if you're wondering, hey, where's my RAID? I don't see RAID. It's just look for VMD. All right, for security, this is all standard boilerplate stuff. Boot order is all standard boilerplate stuff. Of course, we've got our default options. You can save your own customized options so you don't ever have to lose them if you reset. Save changes and reset, discard changes and reset. It's just a very welcome BIOS interface that Minisforum has introduced with this G7 Ti. And again, at this price, this is what I expect. I want to see some higher end things. I don't necessarily want to see a cheap industrial Gen 4 drive. Nothing about this is cheap industrial, except that NVMe drive. It's the one piece that just doesn't fit the rest of it. And that takes us to the next part of the video, the part that many of us are looking forward to. We get to tear it apart. Now, we're not going to tear, but we are going to open it up and do a little open heart surgery on this. And I'm going to do that now. So let's just go ahead and shut this off. When we open it up, we want to make sure that it is unplugged. Then we're going to unplug everything so that we can move it around and not get tangled up in the cables. The problem when you turn a computer off, of course, you should know by now, because I've said it enough times, is the power is still running through it. It's in a low power standby when it's off. That's how quick startup can start so fast. So when you're removing parts or inserting parts and you think it's off, and then you see a spark, yeah, you could have just fried your machine, and that's not a warranty issue. You'll notice my attitude is very different when I'm working on expensive stuff versus cheap stuff. Nothing wrong with the cheap stuff, but I'm not going to handle it the same way. I'm a little more careless with the cheap stuff because typically they're not as finicky. There's not as much in there to break. And if it does break, it's not that big of a loss. Now for you it might be, but for me, I have to balance my time, right? How fast I'm going to work on something with the risk I'm taking of damaging it and what it might cost me to replace it. So for the most part, if you see me manhandling some parts on camera, I'm doing that for entertainment. However, if the machine is older, doesn't have much value, you might find I'm a lot less careful with it because I don't care as much. It's almost like I'm doing myself a favor if I accidentally break it and tell the customer, I'm going to have to replace it, right? And I'll do so at my cost. It'll be at my cost. But at the same time, if I, in that circumstance, know I'm giving my customer something better, the customer's got nothing to argue about, right? They're, oh, you're going to give me something better and it doesn't cost me anything? And then I think, oh, good, I'll never have to see that old piece of crap ever again. It's in my benefit to make sure that customer has something better. It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest. If they've got, a third generation Intel and I've got a sixth laying around here that they can have, or an eighth gen, which is useless to me. Now they're Windows 11 compatible with that eighth gen. I'm getting rid of spare parts. Their old one can be chucked in the recycle bin. I can say, here, no charge. I get rid of it, and I can just manhandle the old parts because I don't even care on that Gen 3. Who cares? Get it in, get it out. Customer's excited, and that customer will never bring me a Gen 3 to work on again. At least not that one. So that benefits me. All right, we never secured this foot down, right? So we're just going to lift this up. Normally there's 2 screws that hold this in place. That is a weighted foot. Yeah, it's got some weight to it. We've got 3 screws on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. And then one side or the other pulls off. Is it the side that's solid or the side with the holes? I'm not sure yet. But let's go ahead and get these screws out of here. And I'm just going to use a regular screwdriver on this. Again, even with the power tools, if it's cheaper, I don't care so much. If it's more expensive, I generally am going to treat it with a little bit more delicacy and care. Especially if it's not mine. If a customer brings me a $4,000 computer, I'm going to be a lot slower. There's also a lot more money in the repair because a customer who has a $4,000 computer probably has the money to pay me. A person with an old Gen 3 that they're still using today probably doesn't have much money to pay me. So one goes with the other. Either way, I take care of my customers, and I do so as appropriately, as inexpensively, as quickly, as reasonable for that situation. Let me get a little blue Loctite on here. So those are in there pretty good. Okay, so one last screw here. These are a bit longer than I expected. I'm kind of regretting doing this. This is an awkward angle to unscrew these screws because it's starting to cramp up my hands. Probably could have used the cordless driver to take those out. Now, one of these sides or the other comes apart, and it appears this side with the holes is moving very easily, and this other side with the logo, it's not budging. So without having to look at any manuals, without having to look at any videos, you can sort of figure it out. Now, there are plastic clips that are holding this in place, and so far as I know, a spudger doesn't really help you in this design. I think you just got to be gentle and careful and pry it. I'm trying to get my fingers in the seam. It's harder for you to see, but right in there. And I don't want to rip it apart. I want to gently feel those clips start to go. There's one. That's heart attack. That sounds like something broke. That should just be one of the clips releasing. Now all the others should come out a lot easier. Yeah, I see where the clip is here. It's it almost looks like it's in backwards. It is so weird. Let's see if we can get the other side. Makes me so nervous. I'm just trying to see where the clip was. I can't see. It's dark in there. So let me get my glasses. I'll get my big glasses out. My magnifiers. Because if I can understand where the clip is, I don't see a clip. I mean, clearly something was holding this in. Where's the clip? Oh, the clip appears right here. Maybe? I need a flashlight. I'm pointing at the wrong thing. Okay, so there's a clip right there, and there's a clip right there. I don't know how well the camera's going to pick those clips up. Right there, right there. The clips are not on the top. At least not that I've seen yet. Which makes sense, because that's where the screws hold it in. Why would you need the clips too? There may be clips at the bottom. So maybe the answer is, no, I'm not sure. Can we pop this side off? Wow, that is on tight. It just doesn't, you definitely don't want to use brute force, especially on these mini PCs. There's a lot of delicate parts. Same with a laptop. I'm just going to try and gently coax it. It may be that we need to start taking this side off since we started here and we made progress and this is being cooperative. Maybe. The problem is, I'm not quite sure where the other clips are or how they go in, if they go in horizontally or vertically. And so if you pull the lid off from the wrong direction, you could break the clip. Boy, that's just That is awfully tight, or something is still holding it in that's in our way. Ooh, gosh, that's painful. So once again, it looks like we've got the same clips on the other side. Yep, there's two. And it looks like they'd be super easy to break. I'm just not sure how you could get a spudger in there and push those clips in. They're so thick, and the spudgers has to be so thin. I'm not sure the spudger could do that without breaking the spudger. I think it's just meant to be pulled apart, but it's awfully risky, especially as the machine ages and the parts become more brittle because they are plastic. It would be nice if we had some metal reinforcement or more of a cabinet style of latching mechanism, or heck, even some screws, quite honestly, than this. You can see this makes me very nervous. And I've done this for many, many decades. I've worked on machines. And my specialty is definitely not laptops. And it's one of the reasons you don't frequently see laptops here, is it's quite nerve-wracking. And their expense, like if I break it in the process, I have to buy my customer, you know, whatever the replacement part is, I have to get it and pay for it. And it's not really instilling any customer confidence when you do that. But there are people that work on laptops regularly. Gosh, this makes me nervous. And they can do so with all confidence, you know, no big deal. And they probably have a lot of spare parts laying around. Hey, look, there's a laptop inside. Who knew? Now, I'm going to show you these clips up close, so if you get one of these and you want to know how to open it, you know where to watch for the sticking points, which is going to be where all the clips are. So when I bring this up, we have a clip here, a clip here, a clip here. We have a clip here. We have a big clip down here, and another one here. Right? These three across the bottom. We've got these two on the what is your right side, and then 1, 2, 3. They're not the same on both sides. Up here, no clips at all. These are your 3 screws. That makes sense. Oh, it's nerve-wracking to get that taken off. Now, looking at it this way, it looks like probably we need to put this side in first and then close it like that. And the sticker on the back is upside down based on the way I'm holding it here. That's because this would be where the foot is, right? Remember, where the screws were, this would normally be sitting upright on the desk like this. And what I'm referring to as the bottom is actually the top of it. That would go in first and then snap the rest in. Now that we know that, if we remember, it'll make it a little bit clearer on how we take it apart in the future. Let me just set this down. Now let's look at this together up close and see how serviceable this really is. First of all, look at these chunky heat pipes. These things are pretty big. You've got some pretty serious fans here as well. And typically, when I mention you're going to need to clean them out, right here is where your fan is drawing air in through this vent. It's going to, as this rotates, it's sucking air in here, spins it around, and then spits it out the back here. So where you're going to get all of your lint and dust buildup is right in between this space, this input. Same is true on the other side. Your input is here, and it's going to blow the hot air out here. So if your system's running hot in the next, 6 months or 2 years, it's probably because these vents have been blocked. And sometimes just spraying air in there is all you need to do. But what ends up happening is, where's that dust going to go? It's going to go right into your machine, or whatever it is, lint or dog hair, pet hair, right into the fan. That's likely not a good solution. So you would need to open it up. You need to visually inspect and make sure these are clear. Sometimes the exhaust vents can be plugged as well. So you want to, anywhere you've got the holes, you want to be dusting, and you may even need to take the fan out to really get, if you've got a lot in there, to get it out. Depends on the environment you're using the machine in. This is your Wi-Fi card. We've got Wi-Fi 7 on here, but you can see very easily swapped out for anything you want. That's easy. Where's our RAM? Probably underneath this. Sticky It's almost like a little shield heat sink kind of thing, and it's just stuck on with tape. Yeah, and there's our RAM. We've got 2 of them, dual channel. So if you change your RAM, put that tape back over them. Finally, right there, that's our M.2. There's a big heat shield right here. If we take this off, there'll be another M.2 underneath of it. In case you're wondering, where's our second M.2? It's underneath this. Let me take it apart. I'll show you. We got to put the other NVMe in it. Then we can run Acronis locally, which is way faster than using it through USB. And we can clone the drive, which, by the way, we could set this right back in its stand now. And we can run it this way. We don't even have to put that cover back on. There's nothing on the cover we need. So if you really wanted a showpiece and you wanted to leave it open, look, understand you're opening it up to the static in your environment, and any pets or small children can get their fingers in there. But you could totally run this without that back cover if you wanted to. That's not always the case with mini PCs. Sometimes there's fans, lights, or ports built into the covers or antennas. This one is literally just like the hood of a car. And since we don't care about aerodynamics, it has no impact on the machine at all. All right, so with my thicker glasses on here, let me see, so this is our M.2 here. It looks like this one will hold 110 millimeter M.2. I've rarely ever used one. You don't see them in the wild too often. Not quite sure why there's so much support for it. It looks like there's an arrow pointing to this side for some reason. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if all 3 of these screws have to be taken out or what they're covering, so let's just start with this one on top right here, right in the middle. This screwdriver is way too big for that. So I'm going to need a more precise driver, and that's going to require a different toolkit, a precision driver toolkit. So we'll just use this one. This ought to get the job done. I do like my iFixit toolkit that I showed the other day, but it's big and I got to attach the bits. These are all fixed drivers. I can't change anything on them. You just take them out, use them. It's quicker. And that one is perfect. So I'm going to take this middle screw out. Very, very tiny. Don't misplace it or drop it. And that has done nothing for us. Okay, let's take out the next one. This one is much longer than the one in the middle. Oh, getting some play. I guess all 3 need to come out, at least for me to figure out what they're doing. I don't know why there's 3 in there. So we'll take out this third one, which is just as long as so the 2 screws on each end are longer. The one in the middle is very short. How does this come out of here? Slide it. There it goes. I see. Okay. So this is a heat sink that doesn't really answer my question. What was that screw there for? I don't know. The thermal tape is holding the Kingston drive onto the heatsink. It should have stayed in here, but nothing was securing it once we took those screws out. Oh, and the thermal tape wants to come off. So I don't want that to come off because then I have to reseat it. So if I'm careful, maybe I can... Ooh, it tore. All right, not a big deal. I don't know what that little tiny screw is for here in the middle. That is so weird. It doesn't appear to go to anything so far as I can tell. So I'm going to put it back before I lose it. And of course, placing this face down on the counter with the tape exposed is not good for the thermal tape, but that's all right. It's got a little lip on it that's keeping it from sitting flush on the desk. Boy, I just don't know what that screw is for. That is very strange. This is all one solid piece, so it's not like it's holding 2 pieces together, and it's not securing anything underneath of it. with that being said and done, let me show you the way the M.2s are laid out on this, because it's a little wonky, a little different than what you're accustomed to. Let me bring this up here and I'll show you. You've got one M.2 here and the other M.2 raised up behind it. And that is how you can seat two M.2s. My concern is, if you do it this way, how much heat do you build up with, let's say, two Gen 4 high-speed drives? That heatsink seems like it's not going to be enough. I don't know. I mean, without testing it, all I have is my imagination. I just can't see how that can work. If we put two of these 4 terabyte Western Digital Blacks and we're running the heck out of them, I would think they would thermal throttle without any active cooling around here. That just doesn't seem to be enough. Also, if you buy an NVMe drive that has a heatsink built onto it, it's not going to fit in here. And you're going to pay more for that additional heatsink. You have to use the one that comes with the laptop. Or, I mean, it is a laptop board. It even has a little, there's usually like connectors here that connect to like a screen or to a battery. Like typically a battery would go somewhere here and there'd be like a little header that says BAT. I'm not immediately seeing it, but I bet you it's here. Anyway, let me get this opened up and let's get the drive out of here. It's a brand new drive. Now the screws are long that hold that heatsink in because they hold the drives in. Those same screws that hold the heatsink on both sides hold the drives in on both sides, I guess. There's our Western Digital Black. And we're going to put this on the very bottom, M.2, right like so. You kind of wiggle and push until it seats into the socket. And you'll see there's no screw that we can use yet. It's going to be part of the heatsink. Then this original M.2, the 1 terabyte Kingston, will go back where it was into the higher slot that's a little shifted to one side. And you can see we have these stacked M.2s with nothing separating them. Yeah, that's a little worrying. Nothing's giving this Western Digital any cooling. So I'm not going to keep it this way. I'm going to clone with the Cronus what's on this Kingston over to this Western Digital. I'm going to take this Kingston out and I'm going to move the Western Digital up here so it can have the thermal tape. And we'll recover this broken, torn part of the thermal tape. There are some NVMe drives you can buy that have these really thin graphene. It looks like a sticker, but it's really a small heatsink. And that would be really good on a system like this, I would think. So anyway, you see nothing's holding this in place. You notice that? And nothing's holding this one in place. And we attach this. It's got to go in this way, and it's got to, I want to show you close up here. This has a little hook. See that little hook right there? And you've got to hook that in to the metal slot and then seat it down and then secure it with the screws. It's a very tiny little hook that if you don't align it, this won't sit flat. If it won't sit flat, it won't make contact with the thermal tape on the NVMe. And then guess what? You're probably going to have some throttling problems. In a way, having that torn, I keep wanting to put this on with the hook on the left. That's not going to fit. So having the tape torn, I can see how to make the tape line back up. There's also a sticker, and the sticker writing should face me as I'm looking at the back of the laptop. Is this the back? As I'm looking at the front of the laptop, that sticker should read towards me, and that little screw that I can't figure out why it's there, I have no idea why that's there. That's going to be on my left when you're looking at it, oriented the way I've got it oriented. So all of these tips here to help you get it right the first time. Now this little hook, it's going to go, where does that go? This apparently maybe gets sandwiched between the two of them. Is that how that works? That would make more sense. Where did that little hook latch on before? Oh, this is quite interesting. This is a very different design. So it looks like, that's very interesting. I don't see where this hook latches into anything. I think it's just there. It's not a hook. I think it's just a piece of metal that doesn't allow you to slide the drive any further to the left. But obviously to line it up with the holes, that seems pretty simple. The problem with me doing it this way is the tape. What that means is, and I wasn't paying enough attention, the Kingston, to put it back the way it was, would be in the bottom M.2. Okay? This is very different. And I'm cool with different. I'm just trying to figure it out without reading any documentation. Then the heatsink goes on. Right? Just like this. And one of the screws we've taken out, these three big ones are our feet. This one here will go back on to the left side. That's holding the lower M.2 in. And then it looks like we put our, no, that's not going to work. Oh, now I get it. Okay, so we're going to put both screws back on. Here we go. So I'm putting it back exactly the way I showed it to you. I never needed to take this off. I could have just left that on for right now. That screw, I can't figure out what it's for. That's to hold the other NVMe drive on top. So if I take that little screw out, that is super, super shallow. Very easy to lose that. Now I place the NVMe in there, and that screw will hold the NVMe in place on top of the heatsink. So that heatsink is going to work double duty to cool both drives. So I wouldn't set that up with two high performance Gen 4s. I still think, yeah, you've got a heatsink there, but that is a funky configuration. Usually where your NVMe drives get hot is on the controller, and the controller's on the other side on this Western Digital. Pretty sure it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's just fire it up, let's run a Cronus, and let's clone it. I did that the hard way. Now that Kingston drive's coming out anyway. And having taken it apart to that level, the benefit is now I know. If I didn't do that, then I wouldn't know until later when we get to that stage. One way or another, we were getting to it. So no harm, no foul. Got a little ahead of myself. Let's plug everything back in. Let me make sure I don't knock these screws over. Move these drivers out of my way. So we need some power, and we need, I left the keyboard and mouse plugged in, didn't I? Yeah. So I just need HDMI and internet. HDMI network. Okay, we'll turn it back on. It kind of looks cool like that. And we're going to go over to camera 2. We'll let that boot. Peter Leghawk says, the side with the holes. Yes, I forgot. Buster already has one of these, and he bought his bare bones. And sorry, I just saw your comment, Buster. Well, I appreciate the heads up. Okay, so what I want to do now is run Acronis. Now, I don't need to install the Acronis software. I can use a rescue disk for this. In fact, we can even download Acronis for free because we bought a Western Digital drive. And you can clone with Acronis using Western Digital and many other manufacturers. I think everybody but Samsung for the most part. But you may not be aware of that. You may not know. And the way you can check is if you bought a new drive like we have here. I need to go to the right. Where's my mouse? My mouse is acting up. I'm gonna unplug this, plug it back in again. What the heck? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong stream. I'm watching the delayed feed instead of the live. Hold on a second here. My bad. Oh, that works a lot better. It's weird to move the mouse and have it not move, and then 4 seconds later it starts to move. I'm like, what's going on? So that's what happens when I mix up. You know, I monitor what you guys are seeing, which is slightly delayed by a few seconds, versus what's happening here live, and that's just what I did. All right, reality check. Where was I? I want to check to see if Western Digital has Acronis. So Western Digital, Acronis, download. Install and uninstall True Image for Western Digital, right here. This comes free with your Western Digital drive. Here's your download and install. Acronis True Image for Western Digital for Windows. Now we can do it this way. You don't have to buy Acronis. It's a limited edition version of Acronis. It's a 5-year license to use with your compatible drive. It's a limited time offer, which has been that way for a few years now. You need to download it and install it within 90 days of purchase or by December 31st, 2025, whichever is earlier. You see, it's a download and an install, and we can certainly do it this way if we have future need for Acronis. But if all we want to do is just clone the drive, I can use an Acronis rescue disk because I already own Acronis on other machines. But I want you to know this is available to you if you buy Seagate, Western Digital, Sabrent, any of the big name brands. And sometimes they put a sticker on the box of the drive. It'll say, you know, get free Acronis. Other, like this box, I'm looking at it, I don't see anything about Acronis on it. Sabrent will put like a sticker on it. And this is what McGowan and I were talking about last week when we talked about the free version, which it's not necessarily fully functional, but I thought it only did cloning, but McGowan said it depends on the drive manufacturer. It may also do backups. If you don't already own Acronis and you don't intend on it, but you did buy a drive that is from one of the big manufacturers other than Samsung, it might be worth you checking it out with a Google search. Couldn't hurt. It's a great product. I highly recommend it. What I'm going to do instead, however, and again, we're not using a RAID array or anything that's going to complicate matters, is I'm going to look in my drawer here and find my Acronis rescue disk, which is probably slid all the way to the back of this drawer. It did. So here's my Acronis rescue disk, and I'm going to just plug this into any USB port back here. Good enough. Now I can take you through that same boot options where, once again, we don't have to worry about which key to press. We can just tell the system to do it for us. It just takes a few mouse clicks instead. So back to our settings, and back to Windows Update, back to Advanced Options, back to Recovery, and Advanced Startup. Restart now. That's going to bring up that menu, only instead of telling the machine that I want to restart into the UEFI, I'm going to tell it I want to start to a specific device, and it'll look at what devices it sees and ask us which one to pick. That's a little easier for some people than hitting the right key presses at the right times. So once again, it says please wait as it brings up this advanced menu. And as that comes up, we're going to see the option here for the, hopefully, using a device right here. This is the option I want. And then it says, which device do you want? Do you want to boot from the network? Do you want to boot from the GUI, the graphical user interface? Our UEFI removable device is what we have. We click on that, and hopefully that's the way it sees it, and it'll automatically now reboot starting from the flash drive, which would be Acronis. Let's find out what happens. As these are live and unscripted, it's very difficult to know if it sees it as a CD drive, or does it see it as a, the fact that it comes up as AtomMan means that it was not able to boot from that, so I've selected the wrong option. So let's go back one more time, back under settings. Well, first of all, let me make sure this drive is even being seen. Yeah, it's right there. Perfect. Okay, so the drive is being seen. Go back to Windows Update. We'll go back to Advanced, back to Recovery, and back to Advanced Startup. Restart now. Confirm that. And this time, instead of a bootable device, we'll choose a bootable USB, a bootable CD instead of a bootable USB, because some images are replicating a CD onto your USB flash drive. I know it gets confusing. You think it would all be the same. Don't be discouraged. It's not a big deal. Just we'll do it again, and we'll select a different boot option here. It's very easy. Use a device. Now here, we only have two options. It's not even offering us the, it shows a picture of USB, and it shows a picture of the disk, and it shows the GUI, the graphical user interface setup, or the UEFI OS. So I don't know what GUI setup is. Let's just pull that up out of curiosity. That's bizarre, and was not expecting that. This is yet another way, in theory, to go into the BIOS and change your boot options. In here, simply go to the advanced mode and go to boot. And here we should see the flash drive, and I don't see it. Oh, it's the SanDisk is the UEFI OS. I've never seen it displayed that way before. Now, if I change boot option number 0 to be UEFI OS, it's always going to try and boot to that. So I really don't want to do that, because that means I'm going to have to come back in and change it again. So instead, I'm just going to exit without saving. Sometimes there's a boot override in the exit area or in the boot area. And so instead of changing the boot order permanently, I can just tell it, for this one boot, I want you to boot to UEFI OS. And now when it restarts, now it's going to load from that flash drive, if that flash drive is bootable. See what I'm saying? Like, the BIOS is showing this to me in a way I've never seen it represented before. Other motherboards don't show it to me that way. That's why I was thinking I was selecting the wrong device, because I was focusing on USB when I should have been focused on UEFI OS. Now I know. So that's a new experience for me. As many times as I booted to a rescue disk, I don't recall seeing that. But that explains it. And that's definitely a different boot up process. That is absolutely Acronis. And what we're going to do with Acronis, we're going to go to Tools, and we're going to say we want to clone the disk. And why I like Acronis so much is when I tell it to just automatically assist me with this process. It's almost like an early version of AI. This is our USB flash drive. See the interface is USB? That's our rescue disk. We definitely don't want to clone to or from that. That's our utility drive. We want this Kingston. Now, where's the Western Digital? It's brand new out of the box. There's nothing on it. And Acronis is smart enough to know there's no way you want a blank drive to be your source, because it wouldn't make any sense to clone a blank drive, would it? That's why I say it's a little like early AI. It's got this artificial intelligence or artificial common sense that clearly your source, the drive you want to copy from, cannot be a blank drive. So these are the only two possibilities. It'd be nice if it just took this out, but I guess if you wanted to clone your rescue disk, you could. All right, so let's go and select our Kingston drive. Now it's going to look for anything that's large enough to hold that data that's on the Kingston drive. It doesn't matter how big the drive is, as long as it's big enough to hold the amount of data that we're trying to copy over. So we don't always have to go bigger. We could put a 512 gig in here, which is half the size of the Kingston we've got now. As long as we don't have 512 gig of data on it, it'll copy it and clone it just fine. You'll see it came back, it find the Western Digital. It identifies it as a not initialized disk because it's brand new out of the box, and it is NVMe, and that is our target drive. So hit next, and we're using this to replace a disk on this machine versus to use it on another machine versus to use it as a data disk. It defaults to replacing, which is what we want to do. And then it's going to give us a summary of what it's about to do. In just a second, we're going to see, here's the status of your Western Digital drive without partitions and data, and here's what it's going to look like with partitions and data. So current status is empty with nothing, and when we're done, it's going to have these 4 partitions spanned out, automatically resized for us, again, like AI, just automatically does all the math for you. This isn't going to work if you've got BitLocker on, anything like that, so hit proceed, and we're off to the races. Because the speed of these drives, we're looking at 4,000 megabytes per second, nearing 5,000 megabytes per second on that Kingston. The Western Digital is going to be held up by the speed of that Kingston, but it's still not a full drive. We only have the OS, which is probably 30, 40 gigs of data. This is going to happen lightning quick. We're doing this live and unscripted, so you can see in real time how fast it is compared to just reinstalling Windows and reinstalling drivers, re-downloading and reinstalling all the Windows updates. This is way faster. However, it's also a brand new machine. If we were doing this on a machine that was 4 years old, we'd also be copying over all the temp files, any viruses, registry corruptions. At some point, it's better for you to do a clean install. And the idea is people don't want to reinstall their programs. You should always be ready to reinstall your programs at any time. Stop relying on the trust of one machine having everything you need with no way to restore that by reinstalling your apps. People go, it's a pain. It's really not. It's only a pain in your imagination. In reality, installing apps is quite simple. And if you've got a machine that you're upgrading anyway, you may be downgrading yourself by being lazy and leaving your operating system alone. That is your opportunity to do a reinstall fresh and clean so you get the most out of your upgrade. When the machine is brand new, there is no excess, recycle bin and all this other stuff of registry entries from programs you've installed and removed over time. We're already done. That's how fast the clone was. We'll click OK and we'll just close this out. And that's it. At this point, we go back to camera 1. And what I have to do now is essentially just unplug the machine. Okay? We don't need it on anymore. We don't need the Acronis flash drive anymore, or rescue disk. I'm going to unplug these cables just so I can rotate this around the desk without tangling myself up. And we're going to take that Kingston drive out. Of course, now I have the foot on it, so everything's sitting on an angle. That's fine. Now, I prefer the heatsink to sit on top of the NVMe, not below it. It may not make any difference. Without testing it, it's just how I feel, okay? Like logically, heatsink should work better on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Western Digital in the slot below, and I'm going to carefully take the tape off the Kingston and put it back on the heatsink. So, because otherwise, how can I line it up correctly? So if I put it back on the heatsink, I know the puzzle pieces will line up correctly. It doesn't matter if they're separated. The Western Digital drive, when you're doing heat transfer, that doesn't matter. We just don't want any gaps in it. Okay, back to my screwdriver here. So we're going to take that little tiny screw out that had puzzled me in the beginning. Take that out. Here's our clone drive. Now we could test this. We could go into the BIOS and change the boot order to that. I feel pretty confident using Acronis as often as I have that we likely don't need to test it. Sometimes I'm wrong and the clone didn't go correct, but usually it does. I find Acronis to be far more reliable in getting the job done right the first time. And hopefully I'm not going to eat my words here in a minute. So I'm going to carefully peel this thermal tape off. It may help you to use a small flat blade driver or tweezers if it still wants to tear. So I'm trying to not make it any worse. Yeah. And I'm making it worse. That tape is very easily torn. I don't know. Look, you can buy replacement tape. They don't give you any. It's really inexpensive. You don't want to use the thermal paste that you rub. Don't put that on there, because what that'll do is it's going to stain the sticker on top. That's got your serial number, and without the serial number, they can't tell if you're in warranty or not, effectively jeopardizing your warranty status. So that's why we don't smear thermal compound on this and we use tape instead. It's also much cleaner. Boy, that is really stuck on there. Should not be like that when it's brand new. But over time, then yes, this is to be expected. See, that came off a little rough, but it should be close enough for what we need. And just to give you an idea, just tilt that up a little bit. Some of you are going to be perfectionists and OCD about this, and I am on things that matter. This isn't going to make any difference in our cooling, and I want you to rest assured that if you find yourself in such a position, just pushing the tape back, having those little tiny cracks in it like that won't make it. Do your testing. It won't make any difference at all in your cooling, but having that piece missing entirely will. Okay, so it doesn't have to be one completely smooth, flat surface. As long as all the tape is on there, you're going to get your maximum cooling. And it's not expensive to replace it, but I don't have any laying around. I mean, I probably have some somewhere. This isn't that important. So that is fine for NVMe cooling. Most of your heat is going to happen where the controller is, which is down where the way NVMe drives work is most of your heat's going to be at the controller here, right underneath the very first thing next to the end of the drive where it plugs in. And then all of these, and then on the back side on some, this one doesn't have any chips on the back side. Those are your NAND memory modules. They don't get anywhere near as hot as your controller does. I'm not even sure why we put tape across the entire front. You really only need tape right about there. That's it. So that's why that doesn't matter that much. Now, let me go ahead and put this back in to the bottom slot this time. And this one has chips on both sides. See that? There's chips under here, and there's chips here. This is also 3 times the capacity. It needs to have more chips to have more storage. It makes sense. An 8 terabyte drive is going to have 2 more of these at least, so it gets thicker. And that may not fit in some computers, but it's not a size limitation in the BIOS where you're, 4 terabyte maximum. No, it's just a matter of how thick the drive gets. So with that drive in place now, we can put this back on. I always want to put it on backwards for some reason. We'll line that back up. Done with this flat blade that helped me get the thermal tape off. And we want to secure our drive back in with these screws. How the heck did we get to 2 hours already? If everything works, that'll probably be it for today's video. Then what I can do is I can start to deploy this into phase 3, where I put it at the customer's desk. I'll be the customer. I'll put the customer's apps on it. In my case, Microsoft Office, set up printers, set up the network shares, and configure OBS and all my YouTube logins and email logins for Gmail as well as Outlook. And I'll start living with it and then report back on how it compares with the Galaxy Book 3 I've been using. In theory, this should be faster. And in theory, this should boot right into Windows. It should look the same, only we should have 3.5 terabytes of free space if everything worked. Because this is all live and unscripted, we just don't know until we test it. If it works, we're done with the video today. If it doesn't work, we got to figure out why. Came out to see.
In that form, it really looks like a skeleton.
It does look like a skeleton, yeah. Much more so than a picture of a skeleton. Let's see. It's booting.
Has your Chrome tab crashed yet?
Has Chrome crashed?
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Okay. So what I noticed, at least from the testing that I've been doing today, Edge hasn't crashed at all.
Oh, Edge is not crashing?
It is not crashing.
Interesting.
At least so far today.
Yeah, so far. Now, this is our brand new Western Digital drive. You'll see how easy it was to clone with Acronis. And look, I'm still always prepared for the worst. I hope for the best, I prepare for the worst. But you'll see Acronis even resized our partitions for us automatically. Look at, go to Properties, and look at all the free space. The little blue speck is what the spaces we're using. And if we run Crystal Disk Mark on this drive now, I expect to see over 7,000 on the read speeds. Let's find out. Now, as a reminder, these are our old read speeds off the Kingston drive. That's only 1 terabyte in capacity. Let's move that over here. And let's run our speed test now and see what happens. So remember, faster drive, more capacity. Not one or the other, we're getting both. Hence, the price on this drive is a lot more money than the one that came with this computer. We could buy those Kingston 1 terabyte drives all day long for 50 bucks or less. This drive is 5 times more than that. However, it's 3 times the size. It should be not quite twice as fast. It's a little bit slow on this machine at 6700, but that's still a good 2,000 megabytes or nearly 50% faster. And more importantly, I have a lot more free space. Like I said, I'm not probably going to notice much of a speed difference. If we're close to 7,000, if we're just shy of it. The other thing is running multiple tests. It's possible a Windows update is happening in the background that's affecting our speed, and that by simply waiting a few minutes after the test and running it again, we may get numbers over 7,000. You have to sort of repeat the test to get an accurate average. So the 6,700 is a bit lower than I was expecting. I'm just a little teeny tiny bit disappointed, but there may be a good reason for that. But just look at how all the numbers are much larger on the new drive. And even if the numbers were the same, I've got 3 times more storage capacity to play with. Joseph, I'm not sure if it's Yardosfer, is now a member for 1 month. Thank you, Joseph. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Not on purpose. Ron says, I never thought I'd see the day that Carey uses a pre-built system. Well, that says a lot about Minisforum, doesn't it? Because I really love the MSO1, and I really like that S90 that we worked with. I mean, they're absolutely incredible little machines. Now, they're not capable of holding a 4-port capture card. And because of that, I cannot use them as a streamer. And when it comes to the office work, I don't need a laptop for that. You know, I could use a bigger screen and a bigger keyboard. And, you know, I always have the laptop to fall back on. So, yeah, 6,500 on the writes is good. I'm happy with that number. I'm just a little disappointed on the reads. But we can run the test one more time after this. Diesel Doctor joins us and says hello. Hey, welcome in. Also, remember, pre-builts of yesteryear are not built to the same quality with the same level of components. We are reaching a point of diminishing returns on desktops, as we are with RAM and storage, and you know, as far as speeds go in storage, it's getting to a ridiculous point that we'll never see it. As such, these pre-built machines make more sense if it's the right pre-built. You can still buy crappy pre-builts from like HP and Dell when you go to Best Buy. But in the business world, they're all pre-builts. And it's one of the things you'll learn about as a real working computer tech in the service corporate world. They don't build their own machines in the corporate world. You're going to get real accustomed to working on pre-builts, and they're fantastic. They're not the same level as consumer stuff. But times are changing. What can I tell you? And they always have been in this industry. So I started, my first PC was the one I first owned was a 286-12. So 286 was the processor, 12 was the speed. Not 1200, not 120, not 12 gigahertz, 12. Okay? We've come a long way since 1980, I don't know, what was that, 85, 86? Vaso says, I've learned now how to use Acronis. Thank you. Oh, geez, we've got so many Acronis videos here on the channel. If you're interested, you should go back and watch them because Bagout and I walked through all of this. This was a very easy summary of more or less the basics of a clone, but Acronis does so much more than this. Okay, these are our final numbers at 6732. Those fans are really ramping up right now, implying to me something's happening in the background. So I want to wait for those fans to quiet down, because when I run this test again, that will imply, if the fans are quieting, that the machine's not doing anything in the background. It doesn't mean it's not doing something in the background, but whatever it's doing won't be so intense to cause the fans to have to spin up for... Let's just run the test one more time and see if we get numbers similar, or if I'm going to get closer to 7,000 on that first read speed number. Or am I going to see 6,700 again, and that's just all this machine can give us? Oh, it's worse. But don't worry, there's still 5 more read tests on this first number here. And you'll see up at the top of the window, it tells us. It'll give us the best of 5. Yeah, we're not quite, it is hovering right around 6,700. And again, even if I got 7,000, it's a psychological thing. It's not an actual practical measurement that I'll notice, right? It's literally, the difference is about maybe half a millisecond in a load time between 6,700 and 7,100. That is such a minimal, and where those milliseconds add up is if you're copying a very large file. The problem is, where are you copying the large file from? Because if it's coming from the USB or it's coming from the network, it can't run at 6,000. They don't make a USB port that fast. They don't make a Thunderbolt port that fast. The only way that that read number is going to benefit us is for anything we have installed on that drive that we're copying to itself or loading from. But we won't be able to put the data on that drive that fast because no source of data can come in that fast at this time in 2024 with consumer-based equipment. That's how overkill that is and why those numbers have reached a point of diminishing returns. So if I had 2 of these, let's say I had 2 of these Western Digitals in there, then yes, I could copy from one to the other at that maximum speed. But I still had to get the data on there to begin with. On one or the other, where did it come from? It came from the network, It came from a USB flash drive. That's pretty much it. Or I manually created it by, maybe I wrote some big novel. I guarantee you I didn't write it at 6,000 megabytes per second. I need to have 1,000 fingers. So in any event, don't let those numbers get in your head, because the practicality of it is that's far faster than you likely will ever use. Instead, think of it as if you are going to be loading something very large, like a game level or a large application, it will load a little bit faster just by seconds. And if you're doing that all the time, seconds can add to minutes, and minutes can add to hours, and hours can add to productivity, where you're getting more done. And that's why I tell you, as we keep saying all of these conditions and qualifiers, fewer and fewer of you will see any benefit from it, because yes, you might load something that takes a minute, like DaVinci Resolve. It's still going to take a minute, but instead it'll take 57 seconds, right? Oh, let's save 3 seconds. You even notice it? Maybe in a game level where you're super impatient, but the problem is if you're playing a game online and you load first because you have a rocket ship of a system, but the game can't continue until everybody else loads, it didn't do you any good. Nobody knows you're first. You're just waiting on them. So that doesn't help you either. So when you're deciding how to spend your money for what hardware resources you want in your machine, keep in mind how you're going to use it and whether or not you just might be better off using that money to go buy a good dinner, or use it to buy more RAM, or use it to buy a better processor or a better computer overall. Having an older computer that you just try and upgrade with RAM and storage, if the CPU is still the same, you've already boxed yourself in. You're putting what we call good money after bad. That's what we call that. Instead, get yourself a better foundation, and then you don't need to worry so much about as much RAM or about how fast your storage is. You need to worry about it a little bit, but once you reach that barrier, anything above and beyond that, you likely wouldn't notice, because the difference it makes, the more of it you add, the more diminishing the returns get, to the point that you don't get any return at all. You're just spending money to see numbers. I can put numbers on your screen for free. I'm just saying, doesn't cost you anything. I can Photoshop these numbers to read anything you want them to, if that makes you feel better. It's your money. Just understand what you're buying, please. I want you to be happy with your purchases, and I don't want you to have unrealistic expectations, because you're adjusting your happiness based on what some random benchmark says versus what your actual experience says. This machine should be fast and responsive, and anything less than that will not be acceptable to me, and I don't care what the benchmark says. If I put this in place and I find that it feels, here's the key word, feels slower than my Galaxy Book, I'm going back to the Galaxy Book. Do you understand? How does the machine feel? How do you benchmark your feelings? You can't. And what I feel, is that what you feel? Probably not. So the way I use the machine and what I'm accustomed to, I'm expecting this to be better than that. And I got no complaints with my Galaxy Book 3. But if you said, what if it were a little more responsive? I'd say, well, it's pretty damn responsive now, but what's it going to cost me? If that price is good, and especially when you have a 30-day return window, by the way, these benchmarks are completely meaningless. You are the only benchmark that matters. So when I load my apps on this and I start doing the same things, it might be the Galaxy Book is so fast already that any difference between them, I don't even notice it. Then the question is, do I prefer having the monitor and the keyboard, which again, I could already do with the Galaxy Book? Or is there something about this I like? For example, the 4070 graphics card. I think my Galaxy Book already has a 4070. I can't remember, because when I'm video rendering, I'm now video rendering off of the GPUs, the CPU's integrated graphics with Intel. It's just faster for video rendering. As a content creator, I don't have gaming needs. I have video rendering needs, and Intel's integrated graphics are far superior to AMD's on that. That's just a fact. If I'm gaming, then AMD's internal graphics are far superior to Intel's internal graphics, if that's how you're using the computer. And if that's not good enough, then you go to discrete graphics, such as the 4070 or some of the Radeon cards that are out there, and you fork out the money, and you get even better performance in gaming. But again, for me in rendering, does nothing for me. It actually makes it worse. I can spend money and slow my rendering down. Ask me how I know. So that's why the benchmarks don't really matter that much, because it's really how you're using the machine and what you expect from it. And letting benchmarks set your expectation is silly, because the benchmarks aren't replicating what you do. They're not. The only one who replicates what you do is you. Nobody else does things the way you do them or does the things you're doing at all. And that's why when I set up computers for clients, I run benchmarks to make sure everything passes, that we don't have any problems prior to delivering the machine, and that it operates within a range, not within a specific number, but a range. Like I'm looking at 7,000, I got 6,700. It's close enough. That's fine. That may be all it's capable of. Who cares? It's nothing we're going to notice. Now, if it was running at 3,000, I'd be worried. That'd say, oh, it's running at Gen 3 speeds. That's drastically different. And if that's all it can run at, then maybe I put it in the wrong slot. Maybe there's something wrong with the drive. Or maybe I should just put a Gen 3 drive and save half the money. You understand? That's the reason why I'm running the benchmarks. I want to make sure we're within the field of performance. It could be a little slower, a little faster, could be right on the line, all good. Then it goes to the customer. See what I'm saying? I'm not trying to reach higher numbers. That's ridiculous and a complete waste of time when those numbers don't make any real world difference to how you use the machine for most of us. It's a psychological game that'll tie up you, your time, and your money to chase after imaginary numbers that have no basis of reality. You can do that with your time and money if you want to. I cannot afford that. I have real people with real issues that need their computers solved in order to keep their businesses up, in order to keep me employed, and to help their customers. This is what we do. And so there's more riding on it than just playing around looking at numbers. As long as we're in the arena, all right, if we're at 7,000 and we're hitting 7,300, great, no questions asked. We hit 6,700, it's fine. It's a little disappointed, but yeah, no one's gonna know. It's just bad information. The information is poisoning my reality, right? Because the reality is it's fast. Or at least that's what I'm going to find out when I actually start using it. We can build a bicycle and we can run it through all kinds of machines, testing the pedals and testing the wheels and oiling the chain and listening for any squeaking sounds, making sure the bearings. But until you get on the bicycle and ride it, it may be a horrible experience, even though it shined through all the benchmarks. That's what I'm trying to say. And that is phase 3, using it. Because at the end of the day, you are the only benchmark that matters, and it involves feeling. And when you can show me a computer that knows how to feel, then I'll be interested in its benchmarks much more so than I am now. So I'm using benchmarks for a completely different reason than most people understand. It's also justifying the amount of money we're paying. I expect a certain level of performance. Otherwise, why did I pay that much? And if we get that, then in theory, the feeling should follow, in theory, but we only know in practice, does it actually feel faster? All right, so just to be clear with everybody. Now, one final look through the chat. Oh, and we can check the phone, and then we're gonna say goodbye. Again, this is a machine we purchased, the drive we purchased. This is all done with your Super Chats, your Amazon gift card, your PayPal. Without you guys, this video absolutely would not have happened. We can't thank you enough for it. And we will follow up eventually. Give me a couple months in 2025. Unless something drastic happens between now and then, you can ask me how it's going. If I don't volunteer that information, you might need to remind me, am I still using it as my main machine? Over that period of time, I should get to know it well and tell you how I feel about it compared to the Galaxy Book that I have no complaints about. Oh, I see Peter sent us an email on how to open the case. shows somebody holding down the foot with one hand and pulling up on the. It's still pulling those clips up, which makes me nervous. And then they do lift it up in a way, which is not what I did, but that's clearly how I'm going to put it back. And the picture does show that the top goes in first and then it slides closed, which is exactly the way it looked. But thank you, Buster. Thanks for sharing that. That does confirm my suspicion. William Denton sent an Amazon gift card for $50. Right on. Carrie and Mara, he says, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you, William. As always, we appreciate you. And we have some parts ordered on Amazon, a couple of new cases, because I still have some boards here that, one of my clients typically reaches out in December to do upgrades for his office. This year, however, the economy is very different. This is the first December that they do not plan on upgrading anything in the office. They're going to get through this year with what they have. They still run Windows 10, and I told them, when we get into the summertime, we should start looking at upgrading to Windows 11, and any machines that you have that won't run Windows 11, like I think he still has 2 or 3 7th gen Intels, they're not going to run Windows 11. We have to upgrade them. And he's like, well, if business stays slow, we won't even need them. We won't even upgrade them. We'll just retire them. And that'll be that. So hopefully things will turn around. When my clients get busy, I get busy. When my clients slow down, I slow down. And if the clients go out of business, well, if I'm not careful, I could be right behind them. So it's never good news when a client tells you their annual upgrade isn't going to happen this year. That tells me their business is not doing well. And if enough clients do that, then that means my business isn't doing well either. However, we do have a machine coming in for an upgrade from one of the employees at one of my clients, their personal machine. We have a machine coming in for an upgrade from our good friend Mitch. That's going to get rid of 2 of our, 9 boards we've got. And for the others, I've ordered 3 more cases. So that'll be homes for 3 of the motherboards. And I think that's going to leave us with 3 or 4. And between now and then, we might get some orders. We'll see how some people wait till the last minute before the end of the year to spend some money. Other people, they're on the fence about whether or not to do it. And then as the year's coming to a close, they feel like, that pushes them into a decision. So I'm not counting my eggs before they hatch. I still think we have an opportunity to sell these boards, potentially put them into a case the customer already has. And that's why I've been very hesitant to order cases for these. But that still leaves me with half of the prep boards. And that doesn't include anything we're already putting in cases like the Leon Lee and the Asus ProArt and the, I will tell you that Sama case that we put the reverse connectors on, terrible, terrible case. It doesn't let me close the back panel because the rear connectors get in the way. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So that whole board, all of that equipment needs to come out of that case. Now that case will be fine if we take, for example, one of the boards we're going to upgrade out of one of the clients. Let's say it's reusable. That Sama case is effectively bargain basement junk. So if we put a bargain basement junk motherboard in it, it'll be fine. The panels will close. The minute you start adding RGB and liquid cooling, that Sama case, even though it says it's designed for rear connectors, gives you no room for the rear connectors. It is the most, like the rear panel is so close to the back of the board, the rear connectors get in the way. The worst rear connector motherboard I've ever seen in my life. That's doubling my work. Now I have to undo everything I did. And I'm not going to just throw the case in the recycle bin. I'll just use some cheap motherboard to throw in there that doesn't need all that cabling and doesn't have rear connectors. It'll close up just fine. Oh man, that's a mistake I won't make again. If I see Sama, S-A-M-A, as the case maker, you'll never see another one on this channel. I am so done with it. Unless they get their act together and they've convinced me they're worth retrying, I have no plans on ever using that brand ever again. We put a really nice motherboard in there, really nice components,
And now we can't close the panel on the case because the cables stick out. Well, of course the cables stick out. How could you not think of that when you're designing the case? That's so offensive to me. It's basic, like a child would know. You better have room for the back panel to go on.
Why don't you tell us how you really feel?
I am so upset by it because I did all that work and I got to undo it, right? I got to do it again into another case, and then I got to put something else in that case. Like I got nothing else to do.
I don't think you're being very clear. And I
Playing
feel
musical
bad.
chairs with all the motherboards and cases. I already had that problem with the Black Widow case, but thankfully we didn't get too far along. That's another one. I could take one of these used crappy motherboard. Well, it's not crappy. They're just old, and stick it into one of these crappy cases. It'll be fine.
Sure.
Don't buy a cheap case and put expensive parts in it, or you're going to run into these issues that are very upsetting, especially if you've had the pleasure of working on a case that has that cable consideration. But Leon Lee comes to mind. Super easy for all the cables. They fit beautifully. It's not a cheap case, but those weren't cheap parts. That's all I'm trying to say. Just had to get that off my chest. I want my viewers to not have to go through that. And if they choose to, they were warned.
Correct.
Choose the appropriate case for the appropriate parts. Cheap case, cheap parts.
So passionate.
It's frustrating to spend my time to put something together that won't go smoothly when it was marketed and promised that it was specifically designed for that purpose. I mean, I'm lied to, basically. I'm offended. I can't trust them. They've lost my trust. All right, with that, Bajan guy, what's he saying? I hope that case cost an arm and a leg. Which case? Oh, doesn't cost an arm and a leg. You'll see. Andy says it'll be good to see Mitch on Friday. Just a reminder, that could switch. We could be back to the ProArt build on Friday, depending on whether or not we get everything we need. If we don't get everything we need, Mitch is our backup. Mitch is local and very flexible, so it's not as though we're on a time crunch. With the Asus ProArt build, I have put myself on a time crunch. It's a channel build, but I'd really like to see it done. I'm super anxious. So this is a personal choice. If I can do the ProArt on Friday, I will. I'm just not confident we're going to have everything we need. And I won't know till tomorrow. There'll be no new video tomorrow. I need to take a day off. But we'll be back on Friday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I would like to see it done too.
The ProArt? Oh, because you want it.
Because I want it.
Yeah, but you want everything you see on the bench.
No, not true. I don't want that. You can have that.
Thank you. I wasn't offering it.
Great.
Glad we can agree.
Yeah.
Then when she gets the ProArt, that means we're going to take the big Apache helicopter, which is a 10900K.
Correct.
And we'll gut it and we'll put I don't know.
Something amazing in it.
Because the Ultra 9, that's going in the ProArt. We have a couple of Ultra 7s and we have a couple of 14900s. In fact, it was the 14900 on the Meg Ace that we were putting into the other case with the spinning dais that has a little dragon on it that spins. That was supposed to be your new machine.
Which I love them both, but that ProArt is absolutely mind-blowing.
And that machine is done. I just haven't cabled it up. It's got 3 different fan controllers in it. I just really don't want to cable. I wish I had an intern and I could go, here, finish that. Because I don't want to. But I mean, we could put that in your office and you could start using it,
Yeah.
but you don't want it all with all the wires hanging out like that.
Well, that doesn't really bother me, but
I'll move it in there right now.
After seeing the ProArt, that's what I want.
Now you don't want it anymore. Now you want the ProArt.
It's not that I don't want it. I do, but I want
The
ProArt.
ProArt
at
is
least as my
far
parent.
superior. Remember, we're based, the Meg 690 was a very expensive motherboard, but it's about 2 years old now.
Yeah.
It's new
The
for
ProArt
us,
has everything that I need.
but the
in it.
ProArt is brand new, fresh off the factory
it's
floor
beautiful.
with the latest tech.
Perfect. Yeah.
But there's no RGB on it.
You know what? Don't care.
Wow. I don't know who you are or what you've done with Mara. Something's going on that's fishy. Something sketchy's happening.
Practicality and performance.
which
I
she's
don't
never cared
necessarily
about
need-
practicality
all
ever.
I know is looking down at it while I'm using it, what I'll see is performance and practicality, and I'll be happy with that.
Here, I got you a present.
Gee, thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Gee, thanks.
Have a mediocre NVMe drive.
You can keep that.
Okay. I'll just put it over here with the rest of my mediocre NVMe drives.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with mediocre as long as we're pairing it with mediocre. That's all I'm saying. This is not mediocre. It deserves better than this. That's the one criticism I've got for it, aside from the fact they're hard to get. It is kind of cool to be able to just kind of leave it out like that, though. But I'll put the cover back on it, well, because just to protect it, really. Also, it ensures the proper airflow. Although those fans are more or less sealed in for input and output, it probably won't make that big of a difference on the cooling. I don't know. It's pretty neat, though, that you can run it that way. All right, that'll wrap it up for me for today. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you for all your memberships, your support, your kindness, your friendship. Thanks to our friends at Acronis, whose product we just demonstrated today, and you could get potentially for free with the purchase of name brand drives. Most of them, other than Samsung, do offer it. You might have to go and look. Thank you, of course, to RoboForm, 30% off for all new customers. Our friends at SCD Keys, offering Windows and Microsoft Office license keys. They're legitimate, legal, and a fraction of what Microsoft's pricing is. What else? Thank you to our friend Buster, of course. Frankie B, Oystein, Paul Gray. You guys are amazing. Our friend Colin Hilton. Great to see him again. When we get our 4K capture card sometime around the middle of the month, perhaps if we have time, we'll immediately start playing with 4K broadcasting. However, I will tell you, things get really, really busy for me between November and Christmas. Once Christmas hits, then the exact opposite traditionally happens, where nobody's reaching out to me until about the second week, after the first week, I should say, like around the 10th of January, then things start to build up. Now this year may be different, but I'm expecting the same thing. Either everybody wants me all at the same time or nobody wants me at all. And that's the way my business has been for a long time. So right now we are super busy. Everybody's like, when are you going to show our product? When are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, calm down. We're going to get to all of you. And then Christmas hits, and then there's no emails, no phone calls. The customers are on vacation. You know, they've got days off of work. And then you'd think I was unemployed and I didn't exist. And then the new year happens, and you think things will get better, and they don't. And in another week, week and a half, even 2 weeks goes by, and then the emails and phone calls start coming in. So in that 2-week period, if this year turns out to be like other years, that'll be a great time for us to play around with some broadcast experimentation in 4K. And we know we have the bandwidth for it, and we have the cameras for it. The only question is, will this capture card be acceptable? It's a brand new brand. For me, the way it works is a little funky. It's yet to be determined if I'll like it or not. But once again, thanks to Colin Hilton for making that possible. For everybody with your super chats today, thank you guys so much for contributing to the show here. From Vasos Chico48, who contributed $4.99. Joseph Yaudersfer, who renewed membership. Elijah52 Dickens also renewed membership and gave a super chat. Thank you for that, of course. David Graham, Planet Cryos, Andy Kane, and Zach Bischoff. Frank Stefaro. Frank just became a brand new member. Thank you, Frank. Welcome aboard. At Planet Cryos again. Our friend Charlie Purdy, our friend Buster, also with super chats in there today, as well as William Denton. Thank you for the Amazon gift card. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thanks, of course, to Mara for doing all the work she does in the background. If you guys want to reach out to us for any reason, the email address, I'll throw that right up here on the screen right quick. And that's going to wrap it up for me for today. I'll be back Friday at 1 o'clock Phoenix time, still 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. I hope you'll join us in the live chat then. Until next time, bye for now.